So good evening, everyone. The time being 7:12, we will open the meeting of the Walpole Master Plan Steering Committee. Thank you for all being here tonight. So because we have some members who are remote, we'll do a roll call for attendance. So I will do our remote members first, so you'll know that every time I do a roll call, you'll be the first two to get called on. So Dean?
Here.
John?
Here.
Carrie?
Here.
Janet?
Here.
Jen?
Here.
Donnell?
Here.
And myself. So there being 7 members present, we have a quorum. So again, I want to thank Patrick for all his work in making this meeting happen and getting all the materials together and arranging to have the meeting on Zoom. So our main purpose tonight's meeting is to go through the recommendations, the updated recommendations that we got back from Judy Bear and her team. So we will go through all of the sections. Now, most of these we've already voted on. So I think we will do the consent method. So we will go through and if everyone agrees to all of the items or have some that we want to hold back, then we'll do those votes separate.
So just to confirm that all of these that have a vote after them, this is the exact language that we voted on? Or has it been changed?
It's been changed. I will note where some of the changes are.
Okay.
Yeah, so, and again, Judy has taken our input. She has, using her, her own advice, expertise, looking at what we've been doing. She has changed some of the things to make it maybe a little more open, and we can go through those. So I compared what she has set now with what was in the original items, so the original recommendations, and I will try to note all the ones that I identified. So some of these were very, should be very straightforward, because I don't think there's a lot of changes. So we're start off with goal 1, economic development. Increase.
Phil, can I ask a question?
Yes.
What you would do redlining, in other words, to show the changes in red. There's no. She didn't redline any of her changes?
No.
No.
Why not?
I don't believe it was last time either.
Yeah, I don't. She's not done that. I don't.
It's no good. I mean, I don't understand. It's like a mystical. How are we going to decipher what she changed?
Phil's going to tell.
So I will note the ones that I identified, and.
I mean that's
a good
that's a
suggestion.
good point by John, but at
But-
the same time, the suggestions were taken from the previous 2 meetings, from the board's comments on each of those recommendation tables. They were looked at by both. I had sent comments, Phil had said comments, Judy and her team were either at present for meetings, reviewed the meetings, they followed up. So just to kind of give a little background, in the time since our last meeting, Judy and her team have reviewed both comments that I had sent, Phil had sent, that they had reviewed from watching the meetings. They had followed up talking to the department heads on particular questions regarding a few recommendations that committee may have had some confusion with or wanted follow-up from. And so all of that is kind of taken place over the last month to try to alleviate any additional concerns brought up. So in terms of, I guess, what's changed in it, that's a good point. It maybe redlining would have been a lot of help.
It would have been
helpful,
good.
and that's the version, unfortunately, that I do not have, and what was not sent to us from Judy. It's
Yeah.
what we have is their version that has compiled those edits.
Well, I don't want to be. I would just say I have a strong objection to that. I mean, I didn't understand that the department heads and the town administration were doing this report, and we were kind of window dressing.
They were not, John. They were
Comments.
they were not, John. They were asked specific questions that were brought up by the committee that could not be answered by the consultant or myself, that had to do with a subject matter that, regarding a plan, regarding a study, that only a staff member who facilitated by providing that information could answer.
Well, I don't understand what you mean by that.
So if something had to do with,
The staff members to answer the questions about what the community wants.
It's not about what the community wants.
The staff is supposed to listen to us.
You're absolutely right, but the question had to do with a subject that the board or the committee did not understand, and so that's why they went back to town staff to kind of follow through on, like, does this plan or does this process already take place? An example, like the, I believe it's the, I'm getting it wrong, but it's the school funding that.
Safe routes to
The Safe Routes to School. So I reached out to the school department, figured out have they applied for any grants from that fund. They have not yet. They are part of the program, but they do not have any funding programs on, they don't have any, they've not applied to utilize the funding. They're just part of the program. So that was something brought up where we're like, are we already doing this? What's going on? And that's what I mean by going back to staff, just to kind of further clarify, are we actually doing this, or is this more or less continuing what we're already doing?
So the purpose was really to get additional facts,
Yes. Yeah.
What's really happening.
It's only
It's a-
facts, yeah.
But we don't know that. I mean, some certain committee members, like Mike, went into great detail in certain language, with very specific wording. And I don't know whether that's been changed or not now. That's troublesome.
Well, I'm gonna try to highlight where I have noticed changes. I actually went through and compared each item.
That was their goal, to change that
Yeah.
based upon committee feedback.
Feedback,
So if
yeah.
that has not been done, we need to rectify that and address that with Judy, but that was the point. And you're absolutely right, a red line version would be very helpful, but that's just not what we were given, so.
And I will say that some things that we might have discussed taking out, she left in partly because it was a good thing in her eyes, and I think there was some sentiment of the committee, and we might more had thought about taking it out because it might have been very difficult to do. But the idea in the master plan is that there are going to be things that will be difficult to do, and that would be for other implementation, other boards, other committees to figure out what to do with them. But I'll mention those, and if people don't want to include those, we can take them out. We can do whatever the committee wants to vote.
So is this the last chance we're gonna have to comment on these? Like, where are we in the process? Because I just,
No.
now I get worried because every group that we've discussed these has been a different constituency, and the people who are the most vocal on some issues are not here and would have the most, and I think I said this last time, like, I'm not going back to our old meetings to make sure that everything is in there. So now I'm worried. I'm worried that Mike's not here. I'm worried that Katie's not here, that they both had concerns that they specifically brought up.
And that's, it's one of the challenges, just trying to get everybody to meet at the same time, which is very difficult to control. So we will be doing, if we don't cover everything tonight, there will be another meeting to go over anything
Let's
left
put it this
over.
way, so
And there will
nothing
be,
in here is necessarily new except the community health section, and then there are a few specific things that are they're not identified by a vote that we can address that are in sections, or should I say goals, that we've already covered with a vote. So like economic development, for example, not to bounce around, there's some items in there that are from culture and art, that there's a footnote at the bottom. This was relocated from goal 9 to economic development. So those items do not have a vote. They're part of the economic development section. And Judy's reasoning being that they more or less fit that section, she felt, rather than historic preservation. There's also an item dealing with housing, and 2 of the goals that represent the discussion on affordable housing that do not have a vote, that represent her and her team's thought process on trying to provide, I guess, language that and Phil, I know this is something that I believe you and Katie were CC'd on from Judy as well. So
yeah,
language that was more fitting to being an actionable item. And that was one of the concerns, was having the language be something that's actionable. So some comments like those ones are where I think Judy might have pushed back on. A lot of the comments, though, are representative of the tweaks that the committee want to change, and those things, they should be identified. If they're not,
in most sections, it's very straightforward.
yes.
So I will mention all the ones, like I said, that I saw.
Well, I would like a copy prepared by someone that shows the sections that we voted on, and any changes that have happened. I want either redlined or yellowed or something to know what changes have been made to those above and beyond outside of our votes.
We'll tell you what, John, that could be something that we have provided for the next meeting. If we've already have a vote associated with it, right now, we can review it tonight and feel like, hey, that's accurate, or it's not, but I don't have that available right now, John, so we can skip that and hold off on anything that has a vote that you feel that you do not want to address tonight, and have a red line version provided at a follow-up meeting.
I don't feel comfortable voting on anything if I can't see what the changes were. You're putting the burden on me to figure out what language Smith work someone did to change some meanings in some context of items, and I don't want to have that burden. She's a consultant. Judy isn't running the show here. She's supposed to be working for us. So if she wants to make changes, however omnipotent her opinions are, I want to know what they are before and have them properly voted by my colleagues, not by some other party.
Well, if the committee would so desire, we could wait till we have the red line, unless you want to go through tonight with what we have.
If I may, I don't
Yeah.
mind if we do that, see the red line. I don't mind going through it tonight, too. I mean, I know economic development's kind of been like my little section, and I see two things here that we talked about that aren't in the next document. So now are we looking for things that are taken out? Now I'm looking at things that weren't put in that we said we're gonna get put in,
Yeah,
and they're still not in there.
yeah.
Like under economic development, we talked about referring and updating the downtown action plan of 2015.
It's
Yep.
in there. It's
Where-
it's the
am I
first
missing
item.
it?
First item, 1A.
Oh, okay. And then the other item was, we talked about on, further down in it, where it references just commercial and industrial space, we were gonna include, business and retail districts.
That's policy 1C, item 1, analyze the physical, economic, market, and infrastructure opportunities and constraints of Walpole's industrial and commercial districts. That covers business, that very much covers
Well, there are
industrial
different,
and commercial districts.
in the zoning bylaws, there's different uses that are associated with those districts, I guess. But I thought we were talking about more in the retail, including the retail and business sections.
So this has to do with the zoning districts, the zoning districts that allow for those uses. So industrial would be, if we're looking at it from a zoning district standpoint, is the industrial district and then limited manufacturing district. From the commercial district standpoint, you're looking at highway business and business district. So, and I guess you could also identify central business district. So that covers all districts that relate to a commercial or industrial use.
But we could add that, Danelle. If you want to add that, we could do it tonight.
Well, that's what I thought we were doing, because I guess the commercial district does include business, but we also have retail areas too.
But those
But it's
are-
not separate districts. I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
But if you want to clarify it more, we could put that in.
But if it references to the zoning, isn't there light and limited manufacturing zoning? Is a zone, but it's not specified here. It's just said industrial, commercial. And I guess what you're saying is the limited manufacturing zone is underneath the commercial use?
It would fall to the industrial and commercial use. I mean, if you could go, there's a litany of uses that are allowed in the LM and the industrial. So trying to find a way to generalize basically any zoning district that allows
Right.
for commercial purposes or industrial or commercial
But
purposes.
how many different zoning districts are there in the planning, in the zoning?
So from a commercial or industrial standpoint, there's the LM, there's the industrial, there's business district, highway business district, and central business district. And then you obviously have, and then you have residential districts, which we're not covering with this topic, which is rural, RA, RB, and
Okay.
GR.
I guess what I was getting to in my original thing, that I was trying to refer to the actual zones in the bylaws, or in the zoning book, and not just topic of commercial or industrial uses. But that's fine. I see where you're getting
It could be
at.
changed.
It does cover
We
it.
we could add it, that's a,
Well, there's a lot more commercial and retail in Walpole than there was industrial.
And that's included.
Correct.
Yeah, commercials, yeah.
Well, then use the terms.
It is using the term.
Retail?
If you want to
Yeah.
say retail, that would fall under commercial.
Yeah, because we don't have a retail district.
No
It's a
retail district. If you want to be specific.
No, there isn't. I
district,
agree.
it's a business district.
The sheet I have doesn't have commercial in it.
But is there technically a commercial zone?
It would have to do with the zoning district. I mean, if you're
Yeah.
looking at business,
I get
commercial,
that.
industrial uses, how you use the term is really, there's a litany of uses that are in there. So she's trying to find a way that can be as broad, but
Mm-hmm.
not, we can either list every district that has a business purpose, or you can say industrial, commercial districts, which is essentially the 5 districts I mentioned. That's, falls under there. And retail would be commercial.
Maybe it should be left like that, because in case there is a new zone put in or something like that in the future, that it would encompass that,
Yeah.
reference existing
Well,
zones.
she added the word commercial isn't on my sheet.
Yes, industrial and commercial districts. And it was on all the original stuff. Well, it was Walpole's limited manufacturing and industrial districts. So she did change it in that aspect of it, but I just thought it was going to include commercial businesses and retail, but I get it.
John,
I
are you
get it.
looking at the file that has the date 10/17 in the title of it?
Yeah, I've got both here. I've got the one that says 9/9 and 10/17.
Okay, because the one with 10/17 says industrial and commercial, so.
And,
Well, that's a change we've done now, want it.
yeah.
Yeah.
And just one other thing, I hate that she didn't number the
Yes,
actual.
Yeah, I brought that up.
Yeah.
I would agree with that totally.
She took them all out, and it just totally screwed me up.
No,
I think
and it would be
probably
good if
just
she
some
read,
things moved, but
it would
yeah,
be
I
good if she
agree.
redlined everything, that's
Yeah.
something we can take up with her and go forward.
That's absolutely, yeah, John has an
Yeah.
excellent
I
point.
mean,
I mean,
it's-
that's, I can't excuse that. We don't have that.
Yeah.
It puts us in a disadvantage.
Okay.
So,
My questions have been answered, so if you want to move through this stuff, go right ahead.
yeah, so I just want to make sure that, so I went through all of them, and I'm not going to read them unless someone wants that. I'm just going to, are we all right with that? I'm going to.
You're just gonna point out
We're
the
gonna highlight
ones
what's-
that.
Where
have
there are
changed.
changes.
That's
If people are good with that. And if I miss something, now, I do want to also answer the question I think that Jen had, are we going to have a chance to vote on this again? So there will be a vote on the entire draft of the report. And if somebody sees something that needs to be changed, it's not too late to make that motion and to make the change in the final report.
In this stage right now, it's really more or less, do you agree with what this is as a recommendation? Not whether or not you feel like, if there's verbiage that needs to be changed, absolutely, amend it to reflect the verbiage that you think is most appropriate for Walpole. But, it's Phil's point, it's not like the case is closed on these things. We're just trying to move this to the next phase in order for the board to review an actual final draft that also reflects the CMR changes that the board did earlier in the summer as well. So this is a very important component of the plan, for sure, but right now, there's a few sections we just don't have a vote on, and so that's helps our team understand, are we in the right ballpark with this idea? Whether or not things need to be changed with it. If not, then it receives a negative vote and gets removed, and it's not something that is applicable to the interests of Walpole.
Yeah. Actually, I think if this was really redlined, we'd be able to zip through this a lot
Yeah.
faster
No,
than what
you're-
we're doing.
You're absolutely right about that. That was yeah.
I just have one question
Yeah.
on policy 1D.
Mm-hmm.
Create an art gallery, display areas.
Oh,
Does
oh,
the
let me go-
library have it?
Oh, let me
you
go
want to
through,
check?
yeah. Yeah, so the other changes were on, and unfortunately, they're not numbered, but audit and update the Walpole zoning bylaw. Per our request, she removed hire consultants to do that.
What policy number is that at least?
There's 1.6.
1.6,
1.6.
1C, 1A, 1D?
Item
Okay.
4.
I'm sorry, yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, jeez. One,
Yeah, even though it's B, they're just sequential, one,
yes.
yeah. So it's 1.6, so we had,
I'm sorry, Philip, the
Yeah.
10/17, if I'm looking at the right document, the
Yeah.
10/17, it doesn't have any of those numbers in it at all.
no,
So
unfortunately, yeah,
I
so.
think for tonight, going through, probably the
Yes.
best we can say is it's under 1B.
B.
Under 1B.
You know, it's the
It's
last item under.
the last one
right.
under B, yeah, thank you. Yeah, so the numbers I'm giving were the ones from the prior version, which, and I don't know why, again, that we're where we are, though. So we had requested to take out about the hiring a consultant. So it just made it very simple, audit and update the zoning bylaw.
The previous one too, about
Yep.
updating the town's home occupation regulations, we made sure that was tied to item 6D. And 60
Taken out of this.
And tied back to that one, because I think the language of 60 was more substantial, but they were both two items that she, I guess, felt that needed to be mentioned twice in different contexts.
And then under 1D, the art gallery and the incentives, those were moved to section 9.
Moved from
From-
section 9.
I'm sorry, moved from
Yep.
section
So
9.
one,
Yeah, so-
policy 1D,
yeah.
I think I mentioned earlier, so
Yeah.
those are items that were under historic resources. Felt, and her team felt that those items more or less probably fit economic development more than they fit historic resources. So those are three items, 1D, items 1 through 3, even though they're not labeled, that do require vote.
And I think in our discussion, we said some of that is happening today,
It's already in.
but I think having them here opens that, there's room to do more. I mean, it doesn't mean that we're not doing something. But again, if you want to change wording or, yeah, that, in our debate, that's what we had, I think that had come up. So the vote on all of the prior ones was 8-0-0, and we need to do a vote on the art gallery and provide the incentives, you know, the old 9.22 and the 9.23, which I know is not on our, it's not numbered, but that was what the original number in the prior plan was. So, are there any other questions or anything else that you think has changed that we haven't?
Yeah,
I
I
have a-
have a question on you're designating the downtown a cultural district. Now, is that, what kind of a designation is that? Does that limit people who own a building from certain things? Does it inhibit architectural change of facades of stores, or I mean, what kind of what is the designation by whom? It's not.
I
you
think
know,
that'd be through Mass Cultural Council, and typically, John, like, if you designate a community as like an historic district, there are certain design criteria that folds along with that. A cultural district itself, I believe it's more or less a designation for the ability to apply for additional grant funding through Mass Cultural Council. It's not so much a structural change to that district. So it wouldn't have to do, it's not the same as if you were designating, like I said, historic district, or if you're designating anything that has a design component to the actual building itself. It's more or less a title that provides the ability to apply for additional grant funding.
It's also something that has to be renewed every 5 years too, if you do apply and are accepted, so it's not a permanent situation. And
But it's a state agency, or who controls the authenticity of the designation?
it's the state through the Mass Cultural Council. So the state legislature funds it through the Mass Cultural Council, and they're the ones that accept the applications.
Okay, because I can give you an example. They, in the state energy office, they come up with farmers having a designation of pastoral views, and then it turns out that with pastoral views, they can't do certain new buildings and they can't do certain things on their farm. They had no idea. They thought this was some kind of artistic organization. It turned out to be, it affected how they laid out their business.
Yeah.
So, you know,
I think it's good that it says
I'm
consider,
not sure
right?
on that one, I can tell you, I don't know.
The word, I mean, I think the word consider there is important, because it's not saying that we need
Yeah.
to do it, it's just, we can look into it further and decide if it's something of value for us. I know it's come up before in some of the destination downtown conversations as a way to spur, economic development, so it's not a new idea, I think, with the master plan, and it's not, I don't think, locking us into it, but I think it's a good thing.
So the word
I
consider
the
is very
art and the
important.
culture downtown, but I just, I wouldn't want to take any property rights or any kind of design rights away from any property owners that, have a store. That's all.
Yeah.
If I may, I get this in terms of economic development, but isn't it more of a zoning thing, at least the first and the third item? More like a land use or a zoning issue than an economic development issue? I get sooner or later it ties into a little bit, but creating districts is zoning.
Well, the land use item, I think we, as we wrote, has been folded into being a column rather than its own section. So
Okay.
I guess to your point, create a art gallery display. If that's an item that we feel fits more land use, we can write that within the column and make sure she incorporates that in the change if the board, if you all agree to vote to that.
I think the first and third one. The second one, I get it, provide incentives to partner for developers to create live workspaces. I get where that's an economic, more directly towards economic than to zoning.
Yep.
But I don't know. That's just a comment.
But that's what that land use column is for,
But
is
it's a
to-
good
is to
point,
mention
though. It's
that.
But neither of it's in land use column.
Well, it would be, they would just put a yes there, that there is a land use item.
Then they should be,
So that should be updated,
yes, and then yes on the last one if,
yeah.
The last one, though, I will say, I don't know how much of, if that's necessarily land use. It may just be more designation based. It's not really affecting the actual.
yeah, it'd be a zoning issue more than anything else to allow that zone, correct?
Well, it
What,
wouldn't
to
really
take
be a
place
zone.
in
It
that
wouldn't really be
zone?
a zone. It'd be more or less a temporary designation with the ability to apply for grant funding to implement certain cultural specific projects. So say if you're designated a cultural district, there's a grant opportunity through the Mass Cultural Center, and we can apply for the ability to conduct a pop-up in order to have an art exhibit. That's something that's more or less could be a potential option if you're designated a cultural district to acquire that funding. But we can put a yes in there and then just maybe have Judy kind
Just
of
saying.
explain. I think that's.
I know, Jen, you had asked what were the benefits of this one, and
Yeah.
I think it's the applying for grants as
Yeah.
well. So, any other comments or discussion or questions? So what we would like to do then is make a motion that we accept all of the items, all the recommendations in Goal 1. And again, we've already voted on most of them except for the last three. But it would just be affirming that vote with the changed language.
Yes, and not to belabor the point, but to John's comment, I think we can kind of add, with any vote tonight, we would request red line copies of the plan
Yeah.
at subsequent meetings. So they're already in their votes. To John's point, we'd like to see the changes actually, so we just make sure, hey, we're all good. So we can just go forward with that comment to Judy. Please provide that. So each vote can be basically pending can I see a red line version after we vote on it?
Yeah, and if something's missing, we can go.
Why don't you just vote on the last 4 blocks that don't have a vote on it instead of.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Well, we also changed
Don't
the,
vote on the first ones because the people that vote on are even here. Well, I don't want to take their vote away.
Correct. No, that's right, John. I'm just saying, we don't need to vote on the ones with a vote right now, but I think at a follow-up meeting, to your point, I think it'd be good to just double-check the red line version before this committee votes to endorse any final plan or draft plan.
yeah.
Right.
I think that makes sense.
Yeah, so there was change in wording in the audit update Walpole zoning bylaw, and wording changed on the first one on 1C. Those two had wording changes, as well as the moving of the three under 1D.
Okay.
Those are there are five.
So I'd say the
five
point,
changes.
I guess what's for vote right now is item 1D, items 1 through 3 with Donnell's comment about putting yes in the land use item for
Yeah.
items 1 and 3 of 1D, so.
And then the audit and the 1C, because those had word changes.
Yeah, were changes that were incorporated
Incorporated
from the boards,
from-
from the
yeah.
comments from last
Yeah.
meeting.
Which we did vote on at the time we
Yes,
voted.
yeah.
Yeah, which we did vote for that. So,
So we don't need to vote on the word changes because we already voted that,
we
Sort of
we
voted
did
in,
vote on that when we
yeah.
had the discussion. We did do that, yeah.
so just 1D.
So just the last three.
All right, so I'll make a
Oh.
motion to accept the 3 items under policy 1D.
I'll second.
And then as Patrick said, we will want to see from Judy the red line version, so we can
Right.
confirm that. So again, I need to do a roll call vote. I'll call on Dean and John first. So for the motion, again, is to accept the three recommendations under policy 1D, along with putting in land use yes for the two of them, right? I think you said.
Yes.
So, Dean?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
And Carrie?
Aye.
Janet?
Aye.
Jen?
Aye.
Janelle?
Aye.
Myself? Yes. So it's a unanimous vote, 7-0-0.
Perfect.
Okay, and that was for, okay, so thank you all for that. And, okay, so now we're on go 2, open space. And again, I can go through and give you the changes that I saw, and then we can, see if there's other things that people identify or any other questions. So, and we actually voted on most of these as far as, so some of these are out. She took out some things because we said they weren't necessary.
Yes.
Under the
What was it she took out? Are you going to tell us what she took out?
I am.
Okay.
Yeah, so the ones they took out was in the old matrix, it was 2.5, awareness campaign about existing open space. And I can read exactly what that is if you want.
Conduct public awareness.
It was conduct public awareness campaigns about existing town open space. And then 2.8, which was enforce arrest schedule.
The letters that are in the,
Yeah, so what's,
Oh, I'm
John,
sorry.
I wanna know which policy does it relate to?
Yeah, that would have been under
2C.
2C,
Promote resilience.
yeah, it was under the 2C.
So it'd be 2C,
Yeah.
John.
2C, yeah, and it was 2.8 before. Then 2.9, investigate mechanisms for improving drainage at town plan.
can you use the
I'm sorry.
policy number and letters that are on the document, Phil?
I will do that. So in the old document, it was under, these are all under 2C,
All under 2C.
under 2C, and they're all in a row.
Are you done with 2A? Because there seems to be a
Oh.
whole action item added
yes.
here. Upgrade the existing signage in parks. Am I missing that? Oh, it was under 2A. Okay.
Yeah, so the first one was under 2B, was conduct a public awareness campaign. Right, just to make sure. I went back now. Yeah. And you do see the one you just mentioned?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, then, oops, let me go back. Okay, and then develop post-flood cleanup team. This is again, under 2C. It would have been just before develop a municipal nursery to grow trees and other plants. So before, it was develop a post-flood cleanup team to restore fields.
And that was removed
That
because
was,
we
that
already
was-
had.
we already,
All
yeah,
right.
the town is taking care of that, is
Yep.
what we said. And then, going here, okay, then the, one second. Okay, then, in the O document, and I think we voted on this, was implement recreational resilience recommendations from the CRB workshop, and that was moved to climate change.
Yeah.
So that's, and so we'll get back to that in climate change. And then on, under 2B, the very last one, implement the recommendations of the 2022 Recreation Programming and Facilities Study. So I did not see that in the old plan, so I was assuming that we must have added that in our discussion. If anybody else has a.
Which, I'm sorry, which item is that?
It's implement the recommendations of the 2022 Recreation Programming and Facilities Study.
Yeah, no, so that's the item it's ongoing, it's in draft form. I think that was something Mike brought up, so the recreation committee's been working on a facilities master plan, I guess you want to, they have the
Yeah.
correct term, but that's in a sense what they're working on, dealing with existing facilities that are either underutilized or have options, or
Yeah.
items that need to be improved.
So my reading of that was something we had discussed at the meeting, which is why they added it.
Yeah. So they didn't have that plan last time when Mike brought that up, so it was.
Right, that's right. He mentioned, and they were thankful for getting that.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
in draft form at
Yeah.
the time, so that's why it had been missed.
So that was all that I found. That was different.
Can I say I'm lost on 2C?
You can. Sorry about that, too.
In the
No, I'm sorry.
912 draft, it starts off with number 7 as implemental recreational resilience recommendation of CRB workshop,
Yeah,
and that's completely taken out.
that was moved to climate change.
That was moved to climate
Climate
change,
change.
okay. And what about the second one, enforced arrest schedule?
On which one?
The second one, number 8, on the 912 one?
Yeah, so that was removed because the town's already doing that. So if you're looking on the 912 plan, 2.8 was removed, 2.9 was removed, and 2.10 was removed.
If the town's already doing it, should it be referenced in the thing that it should be updated, or it should be reviewed?
In our discussion, we just said to remove it during the meeting.
Okay.
But we can change that if you want to keep it in. So again, she was just responding to what we.
Okay,
That was the comment that was provided.
Fine.
okay.
Did you say something, John?
Oh, well, we're talking about 2C. I would just say, Walpole is the mecca for landscape companies. There's probably about 30 of them in Walpole.
30 what?
Landscape companies.
Landscape companies.
And I'm sure they wouldn't appreciate the fact that the town's going into the landscaping business, to grow trees and to give away trees. I don't know where that came from. They're going to be hiring town employees.
Most towns- My only comment on that, John, is a lot of towns will have a nursery to replace street trees. So street trees, like the lifespan of a street tree is like 3 years. So by a town having a small tree nursery, it saves costs essentially to have that going rather than replace constantly.
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think any towns, maybe one, would have a nursery for that. In fact, I'll tell you something. I don't think you've built any homes or streets, but I have. No one wants street trees. The DPW, the municipal services, the sewer, the water, the residents, no one wants street trees. Street trees ruin the curbs, they ruin the sidewalks, the roots, they block the view of the landscaping of the homes that are built that people want. No one who moves into a home wants the town to plant trees in front of their house. And no one that maintains the streets and the roads and the sidewalks wants the trees that corrupt the sidewalks and the curbing of the streets. It's an idiot idea, and anybody that works in DPW or works on the streets or plows streets or maintains them or who does home landscaping with gardening, it's a nutty idea.
But actually, John, there's a big push.
To go to all this effort for street trees is like way out of bounds. You ask any landscaper, any road worker, any resident will tell you.
Well, I would say, I mean, we're, you know, either way, I think that doesn't take away from developing the municipal nursery. But I will also say about street trees, there's a big push to make our streets more green, because it keeps things cooler, and that's a, you know, I think this is in keeping with that direction. But
Is the definition of,
I will say also, this comment here doesn't talk about necessarily specifically street trees, and also, you know, trees and other municipal spaces, so not necessarily street trees. And trees planted within the easement of the road don't necessarily have to be directly adjacent to a sidewalk or curbing. So just because the municipal is growing trees and shade plants doesn't necessarily mean they're 100% street trees.
No, it's not true. The requirement for street trees from the planning board is they have to be within 20 feet of the street.
No, John, that's fine, but I guess what Dean's point is the comment isn't specific to street trees. It has also to do with having a nursery to impact town parks.
Yeah, they pick it.
You know, it's not specifically for the utilitarian purpose. It's not just for the purpose of street trees, is what the comment
Right.
is.
But the whole concept was having the town would have a nursery. We have the expertise in-house to do that. And it's a way for the town to actually avoid costs where we can do it in-house.
Maybe the town could get some cattle and put them in a pen, and they could slaughter beef and sell meat. We do a few other businesses too, if you like.
But again, this
I
is,
do not volunteer for that board. Thank you very much.
but again, these are recommendations that we're making. The appropriate committee boards will actually look at these in more depth and will figure out how to implement them. So,
And that's fine, we can all, we don't know it.
yeah, so we
The
don't
committee
need to.
doesn't need to agree on everything, and
Yeah.
that's the general point.
Moving on.
So,
If I may, Phil, on
Yes.
item number 2C in the 912 draft, number
Yeah.
9 and 10, were they voted to be taken out?
so we never voted on these per se. I think,
But they've been taken out?
they were, well, we, in our discussion, you know, there was a consensus in if my memory is right, to take them out.
So 9 and 10 are out?
But if you want to put something in, we can.
No, I'm just
Yeah.
want
That-
to
yeah,
make
that's
sure
what-
that
that's
they're
what-
not
Yeah, so the notes
just
were-
missed.
That's why they're not there.
Okay.
Is that we, in our discussion, committee members felt that this was already happening, you know, on just reading the note here for 2.5, in the original 912 draft. And again, apologize that we have this little problem of trying to really reference things by a discrete number, because that does make it
There's no excuse for
awkward.
that, I mean, that goes back to John's original
Yeah.
point. It's
Yeah.
unfortunate, and Phil, you're doing a great job of circling back to it. I think it kind of, in fact, I said earlier, no matter what vote's taken tonight, I still think providing the board with the red line version at a future date, just to corroborate everything that was voted on, that's what should be requested. So
And
even
we
if a
will-
vote's taken, it's tentative on seeing that.
And we will make sure that everybody has a chance to go through the changes and to make sure that we haven't missed something. So we didn't really do a vote on, let me just make sure that in my, give me 1 second here.
Pat, did you get any comments from Mike about Whirlpool? Did he send,
Did-
I know he said in his email that he might try to send comments, but I didn't.
Not when I
not
looked at
hear.
6:45, unless he sent something in the past.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was just curious, since he's the,
Yeah, so Mike did say he was gonna look
Representative.
into some of these things
Yeah.
in the notes, so, and again, we can make that an action item to go back to Mike and see whether he wants to add anything, because he did offer to do some research on
No,
some of these.
that's
Yeah.
absolutely, I
Yeah.
think that, just, right now, I think it goes back to just hearing the recommendation on the concept, we want to vote any changes with this group here, we note that, but everything is still up to final look when we look into the final plan. So,
So if people were good, if there's any other questions or comments,
The only other comments on section goal number 2 is, who were the 2 or 3 people on that subcommittee?
on the,
For open space and
Yeah.
recreation, it was myself and Mike.
Okay, you guys all right with what's going here so far?
I am, yes.
Okay.
And I am making an assumption, and maybe I'm incorrect, but I think that if Mike had an issue, we probably would have heard already.
Okay.
I don't want to speak for him, and certainly, I want him to have a chance to weigh in, but
why
I
don't,
think we've kind of been through all of our comments at previous meetings.
but again, we can circle back to Mike and
Yeah.
just confirm that. So if we could just make a motion then to tentatively accept all of the recommendations in section 2, pending the review of the red line version.
I'll make that motion.
And a second?
I'll second it.
And I'll do the roll call vote. So Dean,
Aye.
John,
Yes.
Carrie,
Aye.
Janet,
Aye.
Jen,
Aye.
Vanell,
Aye.
and myself, aye. So it's 7-0-0. So it passes. Okay, and that would be okay, so we're on goal 3, natural resources. So for those who have the 9-7 copy in front of you, I will give those numbers. And I'll try to also reference it to the current 10-17 version. So under 3A, the first one was collaborate with state and regional officials on water conservation programs. And the wording was changed now to make it discourage excessive water use. That was the change that Glenn Mathey had asked for. So the wording before was that reduces groundwater extraction. So he wanted to change it to excessive water use, and that was the vote we took on that wording. The next change that I had was down to it would be 3.8 under the old plan, and for us, it would be the second one under 3C. Under 3C, it's the first one. Evaluate funding sources to implement recommendations in the town's forest management plan, focusing on insects infestations, non-native invasive species, etc. So that was, if you look at in the old plan, and that was under policy 3C, there were some changes in the wording. Do you want me to go? I can read both of them if you want.
No, I see it.
Yeah, we got it.
Are you good? And then in the next one, which again under policy 3C, the second one, develop pond management plans in the Clark's, Cobb's, Memorial, and Turner ponds. This is a request from Katie to put them in alphabetical order, the ponds in alphabetical order, which was done.
And just to follow up, that
Yeah.
is all the ponds in the town? Those 4?
No, actually, I think that was supposed to be including, my recollection. You raise a good point, Bill.
Because I don't see Stone, well.
Yeah, no, I think it was supposed to be ponds like
Yeah.
Clark's, Cobb,
Okay.
Memorial. So I think we need to add that in there, that
maybe
wording.
also municipal ones that are managed. So like Willett Pond's is not there for a reason we don't,
We don't manage it.
We don't manage that.
So add the words municipals, such as Clark's, Turner's, Cobb's, and Memorial? Or any municipal?
Develop pond management plans for Clark's, Cobb's, Memorial, Turner Ponds. I would say maybe remove the "and" from Turner Ponds and say "and any other municipal pond." I don't think we're missing any that are managed,
I don't
but I
know.
think it'd be good to have that just in case.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know if we are or not.
So I'll put that.
Okay, yeah. And then the next one, pursue MVP action grants. So this was 3.10 in the old plan. And the difference here is we requested adding local funding. So what they did is they added all the different funding examples here, like, the DER, culvert replacement municipal assistance grants, MassDOT small bridge program grants, and so forth. So it's primarily the same except for adding the specific funding sources. And that's all the changes that I saw. Does anybody have any questions on that? So entertain a motion to accept, and again, we did, to vote on affirming the,
If I
yeah,
can
so
just say one more
I had that we
thing.
voted on these, by the way. in my
Can I
notes.
just ask who
Yep.
had climate change and resiliency, the subcommittee, and make sure that they're all right with it?
I believe that was you, Phil.
That was me.
Okay, so
Yeah.
all good?
I'm all
All
good.
right, okay,
Yeah.
just want to make sure,
Yeah.
because we're short so many
And-
members here tonight. I don't want to vote on anything unless the subcommittee or somebody from the
Yeah,
subcommittee.
so, and note, by the way, that if anyone wants to bring something back, we will do
Yeah.
that. We will reconsider anything, because it is, there's no, unfortunately, it doesn't look like we're gonna get as many members as we would like here, so we're always gonna be short, the full committee.
So as long as
so-
there's one member, I'm all right.
Okay,
But I
yeah.
wouldn't want anyone changing my subcommittee stuff, without at least one of the members here
Yeah,
saying it,
yeah.
I don't
But
think-
these are the things we actually agreed
Yep.
at the prior meeting, so. And my notes show that I'd have to go back and look, that we voted on all these 10-0-0.
There's a couple that don't have a vote next to them.
We didn't vote, so that when, this was the, I think this was the first meeting we had where Judy and her team weren't available.
Yeah.
We went through,
That's right, yeah, so we didn't vote,
three-
yeah.
we went through a bunch of them, but basically, we started voting, and then we just went to just comments, and so it was the only one we had some votes for.
So we have a motion to accept all the revisions here, including what was already voted on, just to reaffirm that.
Yep, I so move.
Second, thank you. So again, we're doing,
You can have some discussion.
yeah,
Yep.
Yeah, on the, NPDES, construction permits and now the stormwater enforcement, I would like, there should be some language in there to review the regulations and the, procedures. There's something, what bothers me the most about that is that they go way overboard on these retention basins, the stormwater management people, and some of you probably driven around town, you see this, that there are, for, I think it's 100-year storms, they put huge basins for the stormwater, and there's never a drop of water in them. And they become garbage pits. People come by and throw mattresses in there. They have all kinds of weeds and hybrid shrubbery growing in there. And they're an eyesore to the neighborhood, and the people can't really do anything about it because it's protected as a stormwater basin. But the town doesn't maintain these. They take no responsibility. And if anything breaks on any of these systems, they go to the neighbors and make them pay to fix the pipes or fix the whatever. And it's really a crazy system. I think if the town wants to be in charge of water, all water flowing downhill and all water and all storm water, they should have financing to pay for all these controls and systems, and then cut the grass and maintain them and fix them, and be more prudent when they're incurring the cost to create them. Because right now it's really create some, and then you talk about street trees, but these are real eyesores, these stormwater basins, and they're totally unregulated, and they're unmaintained and unnecessary.
But John, aren't they required based on, floodplain guidelines? 100-year floods or rainfalls?
Yeah, but a lot of those guidelines don't make any sense, Phil, because water goes downhill. I mean,
Well,
the liberals can do certain things, but you can't make water flow uphill.
But we don't have any, I don't,
Try to recharge every drop of water in the town of Walpole, pretend none of it could go downhill. You've got the world upside down.
so John, I guess to your point and Phil's point, some stuff we can't control. We have to be compliant with the state, but you could review the town's existing regulations to make sure that they're efficient.
Do the town's existing regulations
They're not burdens
mirror
on
the
neighborhoods.
Yes.
state's?
People that have $1 million or $2 million home, they got this great big stormwater basin across the street or next door to their house, and they can't do a thing about it, and it becomes a junk pile and a junk pit and a goofy, unruly lot, and there's no need for it. So somebody should take some responsibility. If the town wants to boss everybody around on these types of things, the town should pay for it, maintain it, operate it, and take responsibility for it. And they don't do that now.
That's
well,
reality.
I think that, for one thing, we obviously have to follow state and federal water resource guidelines and policies. Whether
The weak bill is the town of Walpole. Not the town of Walpole pushes it off on the residents.
But that's a
and washes
diff-
their hands of it.
So you would like the town to pay for the maintenance of these basins? Or,
Yeah, to have the total responsibility for them, yeah.
So
Like, you want that in
I-
the master plan? No, or just like in general?
I mean, in general, for sure, but I think in terms of this recommendation for the master plan, and John, I don't know what your opinion might be, but at the end of it, would you say something in the extent of, and to review the town's local regulations to make sure they are as economically efficient, or something of that nature? I don't think we can speak totally on
So
to
to be sure
all
that the
of it.
town takes responsibility to maintain and improve these, to make them, compliant to community needs.
well, I like what the language that Patrick was suggesting, that we study it,
I'm
and
not a
make it
subject,
more.
I'm not an expert
Yeah,
in that subject,
I'm
so
not
I
either, and I wouldn't want to be
put us-
speaking as a.
Yeah.
But there are federal, state, and then we have local that don't mirror the states,
They usually do, but some towns will.
go above and beyond it.
Occasionally, yes.
And I think what John is saying, that even, when we have to put these basins, and he's arguing that the homeowner should be the one to have to maintain it, the town should.
Well, then from the
That's a big-
master plan view, then shouldn't we just be saying that they should update those regulations and make sure they're in compliance with state and federal? Stormwater management?
I think
Yeah,
that.
and part of it, who pays for maintaining?
Or is that
because
one of those questions
the
we
state.
send back to the department head, and is there already a requirement that they have to do it? Stormwater management review of, I don't know.
So John, right now, we require the homeowner to maintain those basins.
Right.
And that would be a big question about who, if the town's gonna take that over, or how we pay for that, or how we fund that, or how that happens. I mean, that's a whole other
It's like the
question.
state with unfunded mandates. You require that something to be done, but then the town doesn't follow up on it, so it becomes the nightmare of the neighborhood or the homeowner.
So I think, like Patrick
I
said,
know
we
what-
can
I know what
put,
John's saying.
we can put
Sometimes you do
something
see that
in to
some
maybe
divisions where-
take,
yeah.
to look, to study it, to see how this should be handled, but still meeting the state and federal and Walpole.
Correct. I would add it at the end of the.
That,
at the end of the comment.
a separate item. Would you be good with that?
For right, yeah, you could have it as a separate item, but I would almost just include it at the end of this comment.
Sure.
Just because if we have it as a separate item, we have to go through the whole process of reviewing each.
So where do you want to
criteria.
add it into?
I think we can add it, so under the item, it's under 3A, it's the last item about increasing regulatory enforcement of stormwater controls. under the NPDES, construction general permit, and the town stormwater management and erosion control bylaw by increasing staff time allocated for construction inspections to verify permit conditions are being met, and to review local regulations to make sure that they are in compliance with state code, and to make that sure they are, I don't know, economically efficient. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's having the homeowner pay for it, I think is gonna be, is the tricky wording there.
To avoid having that happen, but I don't.
Or as you said, you making it economically efficient or something, that might.
Yeah, right now, I'm not a
Yeah.
conservation agent, I'm not an engineer, so I really don't.
And I don't wanna
speak
speak
to
on that either, yeah.
Yeah.
John, would you be good on, we add that language, and we can tweak it, that might be something, again, to talk to the appropriate department heads, or,
Yeah.
you know,
Well, I'd like the language to say the town should take responsibility for the systems that they require.
But
being implemented.
is that a master plan issue or like
No.
a charge or a bylaw or
That
like?
may be the outcome of the review,
Yeah.
John, but I just
Yeah.
don't think we are in the
Yeah.
capacity to
Yeah.
make that, because
That's right.
I'm not an engineer, I don't feel.
And this gets into the consider word again, because there's a cost if the town's gonna take that over. So it's not just a simple thing to say all of a
This is
sudden.
a general theme throughout this whole thing is big government, big regulations aren't necessarily the friend of the resident and the consumer and the taxpayer. A lot of times, we want to go overboard. We're going to force more regulations, more staff time to enforce and do all these things. But then there's no responsibility. Who's going to complete? Who's going to maintain it? Who's going to make it aesthetic and et cetera? It's just dump it on the homeowner or on the resident.
But again, that's not up to the master plan committee to
Right.
figure, it's not up to the master plan committee to figure that out. I think saying, you know, it should be considered and, you know, looked at the,
Right,
And John,
periodically evaluate,
that may very well be the outcome, that maybe that's something that the town
Yeah.
takes on, but in this phase, I just don't
yeah, it's
know if we have.
we don't have the
knowledge
expertise,
to really
that's right,
write
and
that.
And I feel like in,
But by the same token, what we do is, you know that there's national and state standards for this.
Yes.
So why do we parent this in a master plan recommendation like this is something that isn't done, and we have to make this more enforced and spend more time on it and increase staff and allocations for construction and inspection?
well,
Why are we focusing on this if this is already done, it's already mandated, it's already in place?
well, I think this was about increasing staff time allocated for construction inspections to verify permit conditions are being met. So it's,
right, maybe it's mandated, but that's not to say that it's always,
or being done.
yeah,
Yeah.
or done in.
And there's good reasons why a lot of things are mandated. You know, we shouldn't just say, if it's mandated, it's unreasonable. There's there's a good reasons why everything has a mandate or,
Yeah, and I just feel like in other areas, we push back on having very specific charges of action, and this seems like, again, I'm not a subject matter expert, but just listening to you guys talk, it seems
Yeah.
very specific
yeah.
for a charge. In the other areas, we said we don't want to be this
Yeah,
specific.
so studying and considering are good words in these things. But I like the language that
I
Patrick
think,
had.
yeah, and I think it should be, to John's point, that's a good comment to add. I just,
Yeah.
I don't know how specific we can go unless it was looked at by a subject
Yeah.
matter expert.
Yeah. And there may be ways to offset the cost to the homeowners that we're not
The town take.
prepared to
Yeah.
think about. So John, are you,
Offset future costs to the homeowners.
Yep.
yeah.
Okay, so,
So with the wording and Patrick, we will send this out. We can send out the change wording.
I
So
like this. I
so-
mean, I guess some of the language
Yeah.
maybe need to be cleaned up, so maybe we pull that, indicate, review local bylaws to make sure they are compliant with state code and economically efficient
Efficient.
as the draft, and then maybe have that reviewed at a subsequent meeting, because
I like
can't speak-
economically efficient because that can
Economically
cover a
efficient.
lot of ways of looking at the cost.
And it's probably, like, I like the idea of having this sort of periodic evaluation, like in the next 10 years, because it seems like we're having more and more like of these like 100-year storms are
Well,
happening
yeah.
more and more frequently. You know, so it's like
That's right.
what happened, what worked for the last 10 years may not.
That's right. And all the water, you know, all those basins are sized based on empirical engineering. You know, it's not arbitrary as far as I can see, but.
It isn't accurate, Phil, that's the whole point.
At the
I'll
time,
take,
it
anybody
probably
who wants,
was.
I'll take on a
So
tour.
we should move on. We should move on.
There's
So,
never been a drop of water in 15, 20 years.
well,
So
we should,
we're over-engineered.
we should move on because
We need more, but here we go.
we should move on because we don't need to answer all that right now. I think we have
We
the
are
language.
noting that, and we're adding
Yeah,
that, we're gonna add that
language.
sentence to have that better reviewed, make sure it's compliant with state regulations, and make sure that they are economically efficient for future growth. And then maybe that needs to be tweaked later on.
So let's make our motion a little more specific, if you don't mind. I don't want to lose the votes we already did. There's no reason to. So let's just, if you don't mind, I just want to make this more specific to what really is being changed. So we are doing a vote to accept policy 3A, the first one, that had language that, actually, we voted on that language. We don't need to do that. So all we did is just acknowledge what the wording is that we changed. So the one we need to vote on is the one just the last one in 3A, the language that Patrick just added. And then on the first one on policy 3C, because that was language that they added. And then on the last one, on 3C, which is language that they also added. So there were 3 places where language was changed. 2 by them and 1 by us. So if we have a motion to vote for those 3 items, those 3 recommendations, and we had a second already, I think, did we? Yeah, Carrie. So we'll go through the vote. Dean?
Aye.
John?
Yes.
Carrie? Janet?
Yes.
Jen?
Yes.
Donnell?
Aye.
And myself, aye. So it's 7-0-0. Thank you all. So now we're up to number 5, because 4 was land use, and that has been, actually, those items have been spread across the other 9 as appropriate. So now we're up to climate change. No, on 5. Yeah, and, oops. Hold on a second. Okay, so on 5. One minute, okay. So the changes I had was under 5A, the first one, which is 5.1 in the 5.9.7 document. What was added was specific projects, specific actions that could be done. And it's explore additional opportunities, so it's not this is not, you have to do those things, but explore. And it included the converting heating systems of town-owned buildings to electric heat pumps and installing solar panels. And that's what they added to that one. Okay, I won't mention things that they actually changed that we had asked for, okay, unless somebody wanted me to do that.
No, unless they didn't change it the way that we.
Yeah, they changed it
Okay.
the way we asked for. Yeah, as far as I can see. And again,
Okay.
let me know if I missed something. And then under, oops, let me go back here. Yeah, it was very awkward not having a
Yeah.
unified numbering system. So please bear with me on that. So under 5A, 1, 2, 3, looks like it's the fourth one. Implement resilience recommendations from the CRB workshop, including a land management program assessing mosquito, tick, pest control options. This came from 2.7 is what I have. So it just got moved.
Yep.
And then, okay, and then under, okay, then on 5C, keep current with trends and technologies and consider becoming a member of the clean, I'm sorry,
Yes.
yeah, so we changed language on that one, but I think,
Staff capacity of the resources needed, rather
Yeah.
than hiring or looking at having a staff
That-
work towards that goal, and
Yeah.
that was based on.
and that was the wording we asked for, so, that, no change there from what we discussed. So, and then, the last page, the last one, adopt the new stretch code, building energy code, and the municipal opt-in specialized stretch energy code when finalized by the Massachusetts Department of Energy Resources. This is one that I asked to add, and I would like to change the language. I don't think it should say adopt, I think it should say study and consider, because the code hasn't even been published yet, so it's
Yeah.
really just, this would be something that would be nice to do, but it depends on what it is. So please change that to be
Yeah. So this is.
study.
Yeah, and any confusion on this, so this is back to our last meeting, we talked about, we have reached, hey, if anyone has any comments, please send them forward. We only got comments from you, Phil, and then from Andrew. Pretty much most everything that you guys mentioned was already kind of covered, which is why Judy didn't include a separate document. It was just this one item that you had brought forward, that she wanted to make sure that was noted as, that's a new item brought forward by you for consideration by the rest of the committee.
And just know that we've already adopted the stretch code as of it was, 10 years ago. And now the state is making a new version of it, and the next step for us will be to study it and consider adopting it.
Okay.
So that would be the language I would suggest. So, and that's all. So unless there's any other comments, questions?
Were these last two items in 5B added? I don't see them on the 9-7 draft.
Okay, the last two items in 5B. Oh, I'm sorry, I missed over that, I skipped over that, yes, sorry about that, you actually, don't, those, I missed my own notes here.
Okay.
Yes, so these two items were also ones that I had recommended.
I'm sorry, yes, ignore
Yep.
the vote on those.
I'm sorry.
That's,
So we did not vote on them, it says we did, but we did not.
Study.
Those are also two that I had recommended, and I think she inserted them and then by mistake put in the vote.
no, so I actually went through some of the votes, I went through the last meeting to watch it,
Yeah.
which was very enjoyable.
Yeah.
And I made sure we tried to get the votes.
And we didn't vote on these.
We did not vote on those, that's an oversight by me, yeah.
Yeah, so, but these were actually two, I had recommended three, these are the other two. Study and recommend areas in Walpole that would be suitable for ground-mounted solar panels and add them to the large-scale ground-mounted solar photovoltaic overlay district. Right now, that district is basically, we respond to when someone wants to do a solar project instead of being proactive and figuring out where do we want ground-mounted solar. That's all it says. And a study and
Yeah,
recommend.
but this wording here is study and recommend areas in Walpole to be suitable for groundwater solar panels. It's like, instead of having an overlay district in a certain area for the purpose of zoning, it's gonna be scattered all over?
Well, that's what it is right now. Our photovoltaic solar district is a number of parcels that developers have come forward and proposed building a large-scale.
Could I make this? Oh,
yeah.
go, sorry.
Mounted, So if we, the study would be saying, well, gee, are there places we would like developers to do ground mounted? Maybe not, I'm not saying that we should do it or not, just more saying we should study it.
So my only recommendation on that, I guess just looking on that now, just from the outside, I would almost say review existing, I feel like we want to review our existing zoning overall. I mean, you could certainly recommend different locations for the existing use, and that could be the outcome of reviewing your existing zoning, but I would say almost you would want to review the large scale ground mounted solar voltaic overlay district for, I guess, efficiency and state practice. I don't know. I mean,
I guess what I'm saying is, why do you want to have a large-scale photo farm district if you want to have it everywhere?
Oh, it's not everywhere.
it's not every.
Well,
not
you're
everywhere.
saying take large parcels from outside of the district and make it a district.
So,
Well, right.
Isn't that what you're
Yeah, no, but-
asking and
but-
recommending?
But right now, what happens is a developer comes forward
Right.
with a plan, and then we add it to the district. So we're basically.
But are we trying to get ahead in saying that this is the district they have to build it in, or are we not?
Well, it could always be changed, but it would be just a way to promote solar projects in places where we
Yeah.
want them.
You could certainly do it that way in terms of looking at the existing, and this is kind of a more zoning kind of question, is whether or not our zoning in its current state is efficient.
Solar
So right now, it's Phil's point. Pat Solar, I bought some land off of South Street, I like to utilize solar. It's not within the overlay district, I have to go to town meeting, get it, the zoning district change, and then go back to the planning board for site plan review. So, is that the most efficient way of doing that? Some could argue it certainly controls where that use is to a very extreme extent, because you have to make a zoning change in order to then go through the site plan review process. But you could also make the argument, I guess, as this recommendation, to maybe study your existing solar zoning if it is efficient. You can make the argument that maybe that use is something that could be by right in a limited manufacturing or industrial district, which is probably to the betterment of a commercial property owner that wants to utilize that use, but doesn't want to have to take the step of going to make the zoning change, but can now just go through the step of going to site plan review. It's
And you don't want to do solar on land which is vegetated. You want to put it on land that's already been disturbed and maybe already being used for industrial uses.
So wouldn't you want to encourage them to change the zoning as opposed to putting in an overlay district?
Well, it is an overlay
Well,
district.
you're right. So you could look at just changing the zoning to be more efficient as a use that's either allowable by right within certain districts, or maybe even through a special permit through certain districts. I guess, to Phil's point, is
But it's an overlay district because it overlays existing
overlays
districts.
sometimes exist as a
Yeah.
way to kind of circumvent changing the underlying zoning. So
Yeah.
say
Right.
you want a use, or you want a more intensive use, or you want a different use that you don't want to make the change to the total zoning district, but you only want it in certain areas. So it's really more like, it's a policy decision. Do you want to over-regulate where that is, or do you want to allow it depending on what the zoning district is?
And I'm only thinking that we should at least study and see we maybe not want to change it at all, but maybe it makes sense to do that. And again, I'm good if we want to change the wording. It's more.
I think the wording's fine. I think it kind of covers it anyway. It's just been on my mind recently too. And
Okay,
it's a
yeah,
very,
yeah.
it's an interesting policy.
And the next one was install charging stations at public buildings such as town hall, schools, and at town facilities like the DPW. And we could say consider installing, or we could say install. I'd be good either way, if you want to make it more open-ended. And we're going to be doing this anyways, so that's a given. It was just, what I was trying to do is put some actionable items that the town really could do in the shorter term, as opposed to some things that require a lot of study and a lot of work.
Would the town,
Who's gonna pay for all the electricity?
Well, usually, what usually happens, like the library is installing charging stations, and the library will make money on it because I believe they got grants to install them, And then when people go to charge, they actually have to pay to charge, and whoever hosts that charging station, I believe, gets some of that money. So it's actually it can be a profit center.
If I may, should we add the language in here for parking lots or parking spaces?
Could do that, sure.
I don't know, instead of just at
Oh, yeah.
public buildings and facilities?
I don't even, because I've just made it for town-owned.
Well,
But
wouldn't
Small
that be
charging
the
stations
public?
at
Could be-
municipal parking lots at
Yeah, if you wanted-
locations such as.
that would be good.
I don't know.
Maybe
just
you want to
thinking.
put there like a suitable, because I think not all municipal lots would be amenable to having
Right.
charging stations,
Right.
right?
And there is a cost to do it, but,
Right.
right now, there are grants there. So that's why I would say maybe we should, maybe study and identify locations or something like that, maybe make it a
Yeah,
little
and
more.
that kind of goes back to your point, Jen,
Yeah.
about suitable locations.
Suitable.
Not every location's suitable,
Yeah.
both
Yeah.
in terms of its
So it could
use.
just add where suitable.
Even the
Yeah.
greatest some parking lots become problematic about having a charging station. They're very strict when you go to the state in terms of like different like grant opportunities. The lot has to have a certain, location from the parking, from
Yeah.
handicap stalls, from.
And you have to have the electricity to the site, which may
Yes.
or may not be
Exist.
easy to do. It may be costly to
Right.
run the electricity to the charging station.
You put one charging station for every 5 street trees.
Well, and some of them are not like, they're so small, right? You would, by putting in one charging,
Yeah,
you'd
yeah,
lose a
yeah.
quarter of
Let's put the
the.
charging stations in the trees.
Yeah.
Inside the trees.
I like that. It's nice.
Yeah.
Flying cars.
So I'm good with changing the language to make where suitable. I'm also good changing it to study and identify or
I think if identify suitable.
suitable. So you want to do that?
Yep.
Yeah.
Get rid of install.
To identify and install charging stations at suitable.
Or study or,
Just
like, yeah.
identify suitable and.
Identify or recommend, or like, and recommend, right?
yeah,
Suitable.
yeah.
Identify and recommend suitable locations.
For
For
charge
charging
stations
stations at public
on
buildings.
municipal.
Municipal lots, buildings.
Okay.
So those were the, and thank you for catching that, by the way. No, that was, so those are the other two that would be included in the motion. So we're adding three recommendations, plus the change we just mentioned. So,
I'll make a motion to accept those 3 new recommendations and the changes just mentioned.
I'll second.
Carrie, second by Donnell. Any other comments? So all in favor, Dean?
No more comments. I vote yes.
Yes. Okay. John?
Yeah, I vote no, based on religious purposes. I think.
He
the
said
Lord,
no.
Father, and
Okay.
God,
He said no. Let me paraphrase that for
Yeah,
you.
thank you.
No.
Carrie
States.
Aye.
There's some chats again.
and Janet?
Aye.
Jen?
Aye.
Donnell?
Aye.
And myself, aye, so that's 6-1-0. And that passes. So thank you all. So that was 5.
So that's 610?
6-1-0. And now we're up to 6, housing. And there are a number of changed language in here that we will make sure that we cover those very carefully. So 6 is housing. So, and I think most of these we did recommend during our discussion when we did the vote. So, policy 6A, the second one, collaborate with neighboring towns to establish a regional housing service office. I won't mention the ones that we're good on. We removed the towns, just so you know, so that we voted on that. The same thing with the next one, it was reworded. And, make sure here. yeah, so 6B, this is the wording that we had discussed, and I guess I would want to make sure that those who were really looking to change the wording, that they feel this reflects what we had discussed. But part of that was to take out large buildings, center of town, to make it transit-oriented housing. So I think Judy might have changed this a little bit from what people said, but I think she captured the essence of it. And then,
Trying to tie that into the MBTA community.
MJ, yeah.
Yep.
Then under 6C, let me just make sure one thing here. Zone for and promote open space by design in new residential development. I wasn't sure if that was a new one, if you remember that, Patrick.
I didn't have a vote with it because I was definitely.
Yeah, no, so
discussed
if-
at the last meeting.
Yeah, so I think it was new, it's new, and I couldn't remember if we discussed that at any length.
No, that was not
And that was,
discussed.
might have been mine, by the way, that under housing, there were a couple for housing I did, so I may be the culprit there. And again, that's fairly open-ended. I think it comes into the question of whether we can adjust the zoning so that in places where the area may not be as suitable for housing everywhere, they could trade, it's the open space
Yeah.
zoning. Do you want to say anything about that, Patrick?
So I mean, I know this is something that the town had at one point
Yeah.
for many years, and then removed it. I just know, I guess we bring that back to the planning board, Bill, if this group does vote.
And
on
that would
might
be-
be a discussion for the planning
Yeah.
board, because I can imagine.
It would be a
That
discussion.
might be a discussion
Yeah.
point. My, I guess, only recommendation, if it were to go forward, is maybe zone for and promote open space by design, or similar low-impact development, zoning policies for new residential development.
So you
rather
say
than have-
adding.
So low-impact design in terms of use
Yeah.
of the land. So rather than having something that is extensive in terms of larger lots,
Yeah.
I guess it's another way of softening it from just being open space residential development.
Yeah.
which
So would you take out the open space?
you could keep it and just see how that goes. I
Yeah.
can only, you can imagine, I guess if you bring it to the planning board,
Yeah.
maybe there's some confusion because that was something the town had.
Yeah.
and It's being brought back.
Yeah.
So.
And I'm good making it general, by the way.
Yeah, I mean,
I think in some of these things, it'd be good to have more discussion before it's framed exactly what that zoning bylaw would look like, because there's a lot of input that would have to go into that.
Yeah.
Um,
That's my only, I mean, maybe Judy could, unfortunately, with her not being here, she probably
Yeah.
could provide some guidance, but my only suggestion was maybe to include just, zone for, or maybe you could say consider zoning for and promoting, open space by design or similar low-impact development zoning principles for new residential development.
Okay. Anybody have any other questions or discussion about that one?
Who were the people that was on this subcommittee? The housing?
So that was,
Andrew.
And Andrew.
yeah.
And were you on housing, I think?
I don't know, I was only on economic.
John, were you on housing? John?
Yes,
Were you on the housing?
Maybe I was on
Subject
housing.
matter?
I think I was,
subcommittee?
maybe I was.
It was Donnell.
Oh, it's Donnell? Oh, never
Yeah, it
mind.
was me, now I'm thinking,
well,
okay.
maybe I was, but I don't recall being at the
Zoning
meeting.
for,
No, Donnell was. You were municipal
I mean, I
facilities.
think that as far as the topic goes, I don't see what's wrong with the language you have there right now.
Okay.
I mean, everybody's talking about open space. You go to conservation or planning board or anywhere else, all they're talking about is open space, so why not have opportunity to promote open space?
Yeah,
Okay. If people are good with that?
that's fine.
okay.
Yep. And we know that Andrew had sent an email saying that he agreed with all
Yeah.
everything, so. And then the next one, adopt zoning for affordable housing. So this was the one where we had the discussion about affordable housing, inclusionary zoning.
Yeah, we
you know,
had
a lot
board,
of,
this is, I guess, coming back to what Judy's.
yeah.
I don't wanna say contention, but I guess her thought process when when the committee took the vote regarding separating inclusionary zoning and having a separate review of overly restrictive zoning bylaws, as well as having a bylaw that accounts for subsidized housing measures, which kind of is a way of saving inclusionary zoning without having to have that in there. So, I guess my take on this is that the language of adopt zoning for affordable housing is pretty wide open in terms of where that falls under. You can interpret zoning as affordable housing as improving your bylaws to incorporate 2 and 3 family by right. You could also say affordable housing is something that goes along with subsidized housing. Phil, I don't know what your take was.
Yeah, and I can tell you, well, in the minutes, and you were one of the ones who commented on this. So the committee came to an agreement on breaking items 6.1 into 2 new recommendations. One recommendation was to change, I'm going to paraphrase this, the zoning bylaws to reform excessively restrictive zoning bylaws to allow for more accessible and affordable housing. The other recommendation was to create a plan to create subsidized housing measures. And then you had you were seconded so I think what Judy was doing was trying to make this a little more inclusive,
Yeah.
not being specific to what it was, and letting the goal of having more affordable housing be the recommendation, and then how we get there would be something that the different boards would have to.
She was concerned with, especially mostly with the term, eliminate restrictive zoning.
Yeah.
Was overly broad, and I think that's why she felt that it was not and that's why she goes back to, what was it, 6D, how those measures are measures to reduce the restrictions on residential, on overly restrictive zoning in regards to housing, because those are actionable items. Whereas I guess if you reduce restrictive zoning, it's kind of open-ended, and maybe it's not something that is an item that you can actually point to and say, we're restrictive in how we do AQVs, or we're restrictive in how we allow for multifamily housing. And that's kind of what I got from her dialogue at the last meeting. But, I mean, that's obviously up to this committee's discussion.
But like even in our discussions though, we didn't say restrictive, we said excessively restrictive, right? It was like we had some qualifications, we weren't just saying get
We
rid
did,
of all.
yeah, we did- we
right?
did
'Cause you
say
do wanna have,
excessively.
you do need to have some restrictions, you know, but it's like, I think, you know, so I feel better with like, I just didn't like last time where we had this whole discussion and then she literally put back inclusionary zoning bylaws, like one of the, like, and this allows us, like, that might ultimately be what we have to do to get to adopt zoning for affordable housing, but it feels less like a mandate, to use everybody's
Yeah.
favorite word. John, you paying attention, it's a mandate. Less like that and more like we can have some flexibility in how to accomplish that goal. It may be that there's only one route, but we've evaluated all options and came to that decision.
So are you good with adopt zoning for affordable housing, or you want to include the excessively?
No, I'm just saying, I was just pushing back a
Yeah.
little bit on like, you know, I don't think any of us were saying that we should get rid of restrictive. We were saying that in parts that it's excessively restrictive.
Right,
That
right.
was like, we wanted a review of excessively restrictive
No, absolutely. I mean,
regulations. And-
So she tried to be more general and say, the real goal is to have more affordable housing, and that's,
And I think there's a number of different ways to go,
To
so
do
I think
that.
that's appropriate.
yeah. So are people good with that language, that change? And then, on
I would give a definition here just for, if the committee members that don't understand open space design, that first one, that contrary to people who aren't familiar with it, don't realize, in what we had before in the open space plan is, there's a proof plan, which means the property can never have as many or more housing units than it could under the traditional zoning metrics. So by reducing the size of the homes and the number of the homes, they create an open space which can become a resource if it satisfies the expectations of the planning board. So it isn't necessarily creating more housing, but it could create more economical housing.
Yeah.
And I'm sure most of you knew that, but if you didn't, I was just trying to explain the term. And it was on the books for a while before it was taken out.
Yeah, no, thank you, John, and that's
Thank you,
important.
yeah.
And this wording is very general as well, so what that might.
Yeah, appropriately so.
So, so then we're down to,
Yeah, I thought
one
I think that's
second.
everything new.
the adult housing, did we already vote on that?
Yes, in the housing?
The older adult housing developments? Remember there was a problem with the zoning in Walpole, it said like you have to have a very large,
Yes, for AQVs.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm just trying to find that section.
Evaluate the effectiveness and revise if necessary, the zoning for older adult housing developments.
Third one
I think
you're
that
on.
one. That's
6C.
under, the third one
Yeah.
under 6C.
Effectiveness and revise if necessary, the zoning
Yeah.
for older adult housing developments.
that's a good one.
Yeah.
And that's kind of general. Again, we brought up the idea that because it requires 10 acres, that there's no sites available.
Yep.
You can't have a small 6 or 8 unit AQV. It has to be a huge project because of the zoning requirement of the town.
That would be,
I think the new one up on off of West Street is 100 units.
Yes.
The Bristol Brothers.
And then I want to bring attention to under 6D, the third one, update and revise the town's accessory dwelling unit bylaw to permit them as of right, subject to plan review, design standards in single-family dwellings and adequate provisions for wastewater disposal. When we had the discussion and the vote was 7-1-0, there was a discussion whether it was only in RB district or in all districts. So what Judy did is she left out what district it was, so that could be something that, again, could be, it allows more discussion and more openness to what that might be in the end. So that, there's a lot of benefit maybe framing it that way. And I remember Katie was the one who was the one vote. And there was a good discussion on that. But, so this recognizes that there, this might need more discussion, this leaves it more open-ended. And again, there's gonna be a lot of boards working on this to really implement anything. So those discussions, it's good to have them it's a little more open-ended. So that's the change there. So that's all the ones. So if we look at what needs to be voted on, so
We did 6C items 1 and 2.
what was say it again,
So it's policy 6C,
6,
items 1 and 2.
Two,
It's the
yeah.
zoning for open
Yeah.
space and the zoning for affordable housing.
yeah.
I'll make a motion to accept
Yep.
the first two items under policy 6C.
A second?
Actually, it'd be 3 though, right? It'd be the first and third under 6D.
I think 6C 1 and 2.
Oh, 6,
1 and 2.
Yeah, the first two.
oh, 6C you said, right?
Yep.
That's right, I'm in the wrong place, sorry about that. Yeah, okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then, yeah, okay. Oh, and then the last one in 6D, because that was accessory housing, we changed the language a little bit to what was discussed.
Yeah, but that vote was.
Yeah. Okay, so it's those three. So Carrie made a motion, a second.
I second it.
Donnell, any other discussion? There being none, Dean,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Carrie,
Yes.
Janet,
Yes.
Jen,
Yes.
Donnell,
Aye.
and myself, yes. So it's 7-0-0. That was 7. Okay. And now we're on, oh, that was, I'm sorry, that was 6. Okay. Now we're on 7, transportation. And okay, and these are the ones we did not vote on, it looks like. So, so this one, we had recommended some changes in the order of some of these, and as far as I could see, they did do that. An example of that is, just to show that, on policy 7A, the second one is develop a town-wide pedestrian and bicycle plan. And that was what we asked. We asked to put the plan before some of the details. So as far as I could see, that was done. There was change in language, but I didn't get a sense any of the ones on that page were contrary to what we had discussed. So, and again, I won't go through all those, but for example, on the third one under 7A, or would be the first one on, would be the fourth one in 7A. It was the pursue safe routes to schools infrastructure funding, and that was because before it was participate when we're already in the program. So again, that was addressed. So I won't go in more of those because that's the kind of things that were addressed. On 7B, study the possibility of making Main Street in the CBD one-way pedestrian only to new pedestrian friendly, promote downtown businesses. That was one of mine. I think we should take that out, actually. I'm not sure if that has any practicality, but.
I was gonna say, the fire department won't let us shut down Main Street for one night.
And even making it one way, maybe, I don't know, but
Yeah, I mean,
it was a stretch one, if you want to leave it in.
up to everyone here.
What,
That's whatever.
yeah.
whatever y'all think.
Anybody have another opinion?
It is
I
just
was
study
wondering-
it is just study the possibility. It is.
Yeah, so, okay, so why don't we keep it? I was the one who made the suggestion, by the way, but I think if we just got the part of Elm Street between the two commons changed, that would even itself be a big thing. So,
I'd be in favor of keeping something in there if it was worded better, because I think the town should be aware and making plans for the CBD district in terms of
Yeah.
making it better for the
So
businesses,
do you want to change that word?
whether
a
it
little
be
bit?
a sidewalks or
Yeah.
what?
Maybe just remove, instead of the possibility of making Main Street, study the possibility of making
Streets. and-
roadway, yeah.
Pedestrian
Roadways in the
friendly.
CDD.
But roadways and,
CBD.
yeah.
I would, yeah, are you gonna say strike the one-way or pedestrian only and just have it go, making roadways in the CBD more pedestrian friendly and promote downtown businesses?
Huh? Yeah.
That would be, I'm good with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Because I
Okay.
think they should always be looking at that
yeah.
in the future.
So do you
And
wanna
that's
say
Any master plan.
roadways in the CBD,
Roadways,
I think, yeah.
More
that's pretty
pedestrian
broad,
friendly?
but- Yeah.
yeah.
to promote downtown businesses? There's that English degree.
Okay, so with that change, and then one of the changes was moved to open space, and that was in the 8.24 document. That was 7.8, which was under policy 7B. Yeah. And what else here? So I don't think I saw anything else. Let me just keep going here. Okay, there was not under, no, so I didn't see anything else under 7 that had a major change, actually.
No?
Okay, 7D, right?
7D, yeah.
What happened to the streetscapes?
So the streetscapes,
Amenities such as street seating, blah, 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 various pockets and stuff like that.
Yeah, give me 1 second.
I think it went to goal 2, so I have
It went where?
the goal 2. That's what we suggested.
Okay. And did it?
Yeah, hold on, it did go, yeah, so it got moved to open space,
Okay.
Oh,
yeah. And let's make sure of that, open space, let's just make sure of that. That's what I wrote in. Um,
Yeah, so that's, under 2B, the last option, provide streetscapes, amenities such as street trees, seating areas, pocket parks,
Okay.
benches, lights,
Yeah.
that's under open space.
Okay.
So I don't really, so other than that, so one change is just that wording that we did, and we need to vote on all these because we had not voted on them before.
Yeah.
So if we have a motion to vote on all of the recommendations in goal 7 as written in the report, plus the additional wording that we changed in the first,
61,
yeah,
I'm 71, sorry.
7, yeah, it was under 7B, the first one.
So moved. Can I
So,
just say so?
a motion from Janet and a
Second.
second from Carrie. Any discussion? So, Dean,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Carrie,
Yes.
Jen,
Yes.
Danelle,
Aye.
myself, aye.
You
So
didn't
the-
call me.
Oh, I'm sorry, Jen.
Yes.
Janet.
Yeah, you
Oh,
have
Janet, I'm sorry. Oh, I missed you. So sorry. Yeah, Janet.
You called me, yes.
Okay, sorry about that. 7-0-0, yeah. Very important that we get our seven votes. Okay, thank you. Okay, so now we're up to goal 8, which is facilities. And so, let me just see. These pretty well followed along. Now, there was some changes, though. So on under 8A, the third one, invest in water infrastructure by upgrading old pipes with an annual pipe replacement program. So you see the footnote there that it was already done. So do we need to add this, or I'll leave it to the committee's will?
Which one are we talking
It's the third one, invest in water infrastructure by upgrading old pipes with an annual pipe replacement program.
about? That's already,
It's already being
that's a
done.
practice in sewer water.
Yeah, so we don't need it. Then. So everybody's good with that?
Okay.
Strike that.
Strike it. And then, and again, I'll just note a couple things here under policy 8B. The wording was changed to continue because it's already being done. So there's a couple places there where again, we had, our input was to them that these things we're already doing, so the wording should reflect that, and that's what she did, would continue. So I don't think I had anything else that really changed. So really, it's only that one item that really changed. The rest was in what we had discussed, and so it's just eliminating the invest in water infrastructure by upgrading old pipes with an annual pipe replacement program. Any other discussion or comments? So there being none, I'll introduce,
So wait, is this one of the ones though, like we had a whole discussion, like people who aren't here, like Katie, wasn't she like, let's add public safety? Was this the year?
So,
What's the
yeah,
one that's?
so Katie,
There's, her thing is in here, I think.
Okay.
so that's under 6B,
All right.
second, yeah, 8B, jeez. I don't keep
8B,
going back to
I know.
6.
Don't take
I've
us
said it like-
backwards, Pat. It's like- budget for the study of future needs of town services and facilities to ensure
Okay.
that the-
Yeah,
And
I
that-
didn't go through it. And the schools were also
Okay.
covered there.
We'll just confirm with her that that
Yeah,
covers her
yep, there's one on the
concerns.
schools.
Okay.
It added back the Blackburn Hall one to study. Pardon me, I'm not going through those, but, yeah. Yeah, budget for the study of future needs. That was the East Walpole Fire Department, that was the one that Katie
Okay.
mentioned.
Just want to make sure.
Yeah, as far as I could see, they were all here.
I think the intent of that language was just to basically say everything.
Everything, yeah, yeah, yeah. So, but thank you for pointing that out, Jen. Any other comments or discussion? So there being none, so we have a motion, then I'll make the motion to approve the recommendations under section 8 with the exception of the one, invest in water infrastructure by upgrading old pipes with an annual pipe replacement program, which we're removing.
I'll second.
Second. By Danelle. Any other discussion or comments? So Dean
Yes.
and John,
Yes.
Carrie
Yes.
and Janet
Yes.
and Jen,
Yes.
Danelle,
Aye.
and myself, aye. So that the vote is 7-0-0. And again, thank you all. So now we're up to 9. And 9 is the Historic Commission, the Historic and Cultural Resources. And Jen, there were some things that she added back, and if you really want to take them out, we can.
No, I just,
We can do that. I don't.
I just want to reiterate again that I just feel like this doesn't really take into the current realities of what Walpole is like, where
Yeah.
a lot of these things require resources,
Yeah.
both money and people power that we do not have for a voluntary board that has 4 full-time members that have that don't have time to do this, and we get either 0 budgeted or our budget is $300. So these are all great things, but I don't want to get an F in our implementation because we actually can't do any of them. I'm just putting that on the record.
Yeah, no, and I think
thought
that's.
they were going to come back and try to reevaluate and make it a little bit more specific to Walpole. I don't feel like it's very specific, but
And we could ask them to do that too.
I-
You did mention that.
Resources needed, staff capacity.
I
I mean,
So,
staff,
I mean,
yeah, but it's like,
Yeah.
like things where they're like, oh, funding for the president, like the Mass Historical Commission has grants, yes, but you have to have a matching, you have to have the funds set up, right? So I have to figure out who's gonna give us the funds. If I go into town meeting and ask them for $7,500, somebody's gonna
Right.
stand behind me as they
And
all.
I know
you
like the one with 50.
Or, you know,
50 the
develop a map of
50-year-old.
surveyed properties and link it to the assessor's database.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Who's doing that?
So if you want, so I really want to keep to
You
the
could add
spirit.
a-
So maybe we need to add more
Yeah.
language.
In your soak and sponge capacities, right? Let's get
No,
more
but
on here, but it's like.
Jen,
it's-
you raise a good point because in this goal in particular, the resources column is conspicuously empty on most of these, which
Yeah.
it's not in any of the other goal areas.
I sort of
What
thought they were
just-
gonna come back with more, so I didn't really go through, because I thought it was gonna come back with more changes, so I guess maybe I should go through, but it's,
No, and this is I think this is I mean, if we
Yeah.
really want to see things happen,
yeah.
we need to
it's-
make it
Yeah.
enough practical, viable that, so resources is the big
Yeah.
issue.
Resources is a huge issue,
We
like,
don't wanna
it's,
undermine the legitimacy of the entire plan by having some of it be very pie in the sky and sort of.
well, I mean, I
not-
just think it's gonna be like, if you look, it's like this, probably the same things from the last plan, and they didn't get done, because it's like, it's, again,
Yeah.
it was,
Yeah.
you know, or things like encourage preservation easements on historically significant buildings, like, that's, you're asking people to, like, you know, some people are buy old houses because they want them, some people do not, like, it's very hard to encourage people who just may want the land to develop it, to, like, you know,
Yeah.
apply, it says, oh, here's one that's easier, apply to become a certified local government, just expand fundraising efforts. Well, you have to have, like, specific, you have to have a more robust historic preservation list, like, it's a lot of work before it's like, it's easy, so I just,
Yeah.
once again, I feel like this is not very specific to our
So-
situation.
So we need to fix that then. I mean, because you had raised those issues and
Yeah.
they pushed them back in.
Almost
So,
like you could just add a goal, like, get staff capacity to implement.
Yeah, like, or
Yeah,
like, I
most
love
of
the
these
idea,
things.
like, if we could have, again, you know, if there's
Yeah.
someone that's, because a lot of this is like, you know, consider the effect of our demolition of the law. Like, it's not very effective, but I'm also like not qualified to be the one that reviews it and to explain.
Right, and they didn't
know.
offer anything.
Yeah, and like, or like, you know, it would be great if we could have like historical preservation person, like, but that's like a full-time job for someone, right? Like, it's not he's got 6 full-time jobs, like, we can't add more
I
onto
can
his.
make a
like-
map though.
You can make,
Yeah,
you can
I'll
make
do
a
the
mean
map.
map, yeah, but.
But maybe that's what we have to put in, and
So,
that maybe
like-
it does require a staff person, or.
That was what I forwarded. So I forwarded it to like some people in the Historical Society and the Commission, and like one person's response is like, "These all sound wonderful. What army's going to do this?" Like,
Right,
so
right. Yeah, and I know the 50-year thing, I know you mentioned would be thousands of properties,
So
right?
it's just, I don't know. It's
It would include.
I just on every one of
yeah.
them, like, who's responsible for this?
Yeah.
Who's going to be in charge of this? What resources are we going to do for these? Or explore providing incentives for homeowners. Okay, who's going to do that? Like,
Yeah.
who's going to, you know?
So I don't want to undo what we did before. So, in other words, they put them back in, but maybe we need to make more adjustments.
I mean, they took some out. I just don't know that they actually like. I thought they were going to revise more of them to like maybe
They didn't, they
reflect
only,
our current
they-
situation.
They didn't really do a lot.
They
in
didn't
that
really
regard.
do a lot. Is
Do we
what I
want to
was-
send
yeah.
it back to them and ask Judy to
Yeah.
answer those
Well-
questions?
Oh,
Oh, wait a minute. Do you need
oh,
a charger?
I need a charger.
Oh, we can plug it into my.
I may have one upstairs.
Okay, I was like, what do I have in here?
Or
John, can
Oh,
you
wait.
hear us, John?
Hold on. I have a portable battery. Hold
What?
on. Stay with us, John.
Come on.
John, don't go towards the light. Hold on.
John, can you hear us?
You're on my phone, John. So my
John probably
phone's-
wants to go towards
Right.
the light at this point.
My wife is gonna want to know who I talked to for like 3 hours.
So like, if it's an iPhone, you can use
Okay.
that. So. Okay. I mean, maybe it's just like number one has to be like how to help us like get the resources to do some of these things.
Yeah, no,
because-
so I don't think this kept to the intent of our meeting, and I think we need to maybe.
And it might have been like, I was waiting, so I thought they were gonna come back. I was under the impression
No,
they were
that
gonna
was
come
the
back more,
input-
and
no,
then
that-
maybe they were
in-
waiting for comments from me, but like,
No, in my notes, it kept on saying more detail, more detail.
yeah, or just
more-
more specific
Yeah, more,
suggestions,
yeah.
because
wonder
it's,
and I know we are at a point right now where her and her team want to be able to compile
Yeah.
that draft for us to review. And I know, did you speak to Martha Lyons originally? who's the
she
sub-consultant
came
on
to
this?
our, yeah, so I talked to her, and then she
Yeah.
came to one of our meetings.
I wonder if it's worthwhile to talk to Judy again about like, maybe you have a realistic conversation with the historic
Yeah,
commission and
just-
her preservation expert to say, how do towns do this when no town really has a historic preservation person on staff?
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
and we're never gonna do the 50-year-old houses, because there's so many of them.
There's so many, I
I
mean,
mean,
yeah.
and no one's gonna want, I mean, who
There's
would,
something that I'd like to say about that is that the 50 years,
John, are you, maybe, oh, you're muted there.
I don't know what's wrong.
You're good now.
The 50 years is like California.
Ooh,
That's just Tim Luke.
We've been doing good
50
up to
years is
now.
like California, West Coast. It's usually 100 years in New England. I
yeah,
mean,
yeah, so our current bylaw does say 100 years, but I think the reason why they may have said let's start to be 50 is because right now we're very reactionary, like we only know, but if we knew what was in like the 50 to 100, we could keep an eye out and be like, oh, we know that such and such is coming up. But again, I think, again, in an ideal world, we would love to be more reactive than we can possibly be, but we pretty much rely on, we have to wait, I constantly have people come in and they're like, we think it'd be great if you took this project on. I'm like, I have a full-time job. Like,
Yeah.
I'm a patent attorney. I am not a historical preservation attorney. Like, I'm doing the best that I can. Like, so it's just, but I think that was just more the idea of like, if we had this in front of us, we could maybe be a little, so we wouldn't be caught off guard with like a 1350 North Street situation or the Walpole Woodwork, something just, I mean, those we know, but like something that's coming up. But again, some of the things that in the 50 years ago, like, they're not, we'll have a lot of buildings, but not a lot of them are going to be
So
historically.
maybe
or
we should go
architecturally
through these and see some that we send back to Judy for more,
Yeah.
what we said the
All right.
first time. So
So-
if that's
Yeah.
good. So, and maybe we need to add one that says we need to allocate resources to
Yeah.
support the
Yeah,
the
like that might be
historical
like the-
commission.
yeah.
To be able to.
Number one,
fund.
right? Which
Yeah.
is like, because it says like appropriate
'cause if we don't have-
funds, but it's also like,
Yeah.
I don't know.
And it may not be a
Yeah.
full-time person, because maybe we're not asking to do all these
Yeah.
things. But even if we did somewhat more, would be a lot
Right.
better than, so.
Like,
you
I
wanna-
don't know, like I asked Jim Johnson for a clerk, because we're a town board that doesn't have a clerk. So we have to take our own minutes
Right.
and take care of everything on our own. And do everything, so it's like, and then like that was maybe like 4 years, well, we've asked like consistently for 4 years, and then COVID hit, and so I'd say, can we have $1,300? And he'd be like, you'll have $100 or $200. And then COVID hit, and they said, don't fill out a request unless you urgently need it. So I didn't fill out a budget because we didn't really need it. And then I didn't get asked again to fill out another budget request. We've been zero budgeted for the last like 3 years.
So if we go through them very quickly,
Yeah.
So the first one, my notes were, it was asked at the meeting, this is now for the appropriate funds.
Yeah.
Appropriate funds or secure grants to engage a preservation planner. And the question is, what can it do? I think that was one of the questions that came at the
Yeah.
meeting. And, because a lot of land is privately owned, I think that was the comment.
Yeah, that's what I was like, and maybe this is like, I mean, it's, I don't know, it's just that maybe that is the one that's the umbrella, but I just feel like, first of all, it's labeled easy. I think that's not easy.
So
but-
maybe the umbrella
Yeah.
should be just to allocate resources.
Yeah,
to-
like
to
in I don't know, the preservation plan, but it's, I don't know what that entails, right? Like how it's,
So should we have allocate resources to support the,
oh, John,
I'd like to change the 50 years to 100. I'm 30 years old into being a historical monument myself.
and so so one of the things we need, it could probably just, instead of expanding it, is like we do currently try to update our last historic properties index was in 2008, so I did fill out a grant last year. I was strongly encouraged to fill out the grant, and then I didn't. I got denied. So but I think that instead of expand the inventory, maybe it's just continue to update. But again, I have no funds to do that because you have to hire someone to do it, and
continue to update?
continue to update. I mean, we're theoretically doing it, but and like
As long as people don't misinterpret that as a standard.
no, and then
All
so.
the downtown is over 50 years old.
Yeah.
All the downtown.
And currently, the way our demolition delay bylaw is written, it's only buildings that are listed that are 100 years or structures that are 100 years or older. It's not, so this isn't changing. The survey is a non-binding document. It's just so we can have an idea, like we have a notebook of like what's out there, so we know. And sometimes it's helpful because it may not be in the state resources. We call it the MACRIS database. But we can say, but we happen to know this is an important part. So we just had a house on Washington Street, and it was in the MACRIS database, but it actually said it's run down and it's an eyesore. But it wasn't in our survey of historic properties. So we were able to say like, well, it was an old building that was once beautiful. Like it no longer had any of that. So like I think so this is, John, not meant to be for the demolition delay bylaw. This I think is just for our own sort of educational resources and portfolio, like backup documents, if that makes sense.
Okay.
We have no desire to change that demolition delay. Like, as it is, we already I don't want more special hearings in my life. I don't want 50 years. I'd be meeting every 10 minutes.
Do we want to change the 50 years in this recommendation to 100? Is that?
I mean, we're currently doing 100, so maybe that would be a consider. Maybe that can be a consider making it, like
Or
Because that's an arbitrary thing.
75 year, yeah.
It's an arbitrary thing. You
Yeah.
could specify whatever you wanted, right?
Yeah.
But consider.
Yeah, but it's just the 50 is like we're gonna get a huge thing. So, but at least then I feel bad for that we would then hire someone to winnow those down to like the ones that actually have some sort of historical or architectural significance.
So let's just go back to, the first one should be allocate resources we should add one.
Yeah, allocate resources, like we need like a dedicated person to help us find, like, cause where it's like, look for grants or whatever, like we need someone to do that for, like it's.
Well, would that be a preservation planner? Would that fall under that?
Yeah, but I don't know if is that the only person that could do that? I don't know, right? We could theoretically have someone, again, not another 7 jobs for Pat,
So
but like,
preservation
someone
plan.
should be looking for grants, like from, for lots of different,
Is that one of the ones that could be a
Boards.
shared position
Yeah,
across towns,
yeah.
maybe, or I don't know?
Is there anybody else beside you?
And Pat Shields, assistant town administrator, also pursues a lot of grant fund. Every department has their own kind of grant person, or also looks to pursue grant funding. This is kind of one of those. I don't know what responsibility it falls under more so than probably me dealing with community and economic development. That's my only kind of thought on that. You know what I mean?
but I also think like,
Yeah.
I don't know, don't high school students on the National Honor Society need like volunteer hours. Like, it doesn't have to be a
Oh,
paid
yeah. I mean,
position,
they-
right? Like, I understand there's an antiquarian society that's starting up in the high school, like with children, like kids who are, you know, so it could be, it just needs someone who has the time that can actually research it and they can say to someone like, these are the things you have to do, you know, like these are viable, these are, you know, I don't know.
I mean, I guess, I feel like every one of these, like, goes back to my point of,
Yeah.
it needs staff resources.
Yeah.
Staff could entail intern.
Yeah,
or-
exactly.
or
Doesn't have to be-
additional
yeah.
outside help.
Yeah.
So we should update the staff.
The new climate change person could, while they're waiting for the climate to change, they could help out with the historic.
It's already happening.
It is just curious to me that there's no resources.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
they
and it's very important.
they listed resources for everything else and not this one. So
Yeah, and
So-
even the original one didn't really
is
have
that a
it.
recognition that like we don't have them, or is that
Well, that's why I mean, it's- again, that's like, it's, you know, several pages, but it's like, we just. So,
Should we just ask Judy to update this? Let her go back to,
I
we
mean,
could go through some of these out and
Let's just
see
go- I
which
mean,
ones are.
yeah, like,
I mean,
So we
you
need
could do it in
resources.
principle, but then also just, I don't know, honestly, I think sometimes this stuff is so specific, maybe it needs
yeah, that it's not,
discussion with,
Yeah,
yeah, or that it's just,
yeah. So who
I
on
just-
Judy's team would be the
maybe
one?
Martha
Martha.
Lyons.
Martha Lyon.
I mean, I just worry we have
Yeah.
like, you know, how many boxes are these?
There's
Like,
a lot of, yeah,
and
there's a
we
lot.
might
here.
not get any of them done. Like, I don't want, again, I said, I don't want an F because we're like,
Yeah,
you know, things like certified local government or the, you know, Community Preservation Act. Like, I might be more likely to get town meeting to agree the sky is blue than to get them to think about.
so on the third one,
So why don't we just refer this back to Judy and say to minimize this or
make it more
consolidate it down into.
practical.
Or
I would
think
be in
about- yeah.
favor of that.
Think
I
about,
support
think,
that.
or to reevaluate these suggestions in light of like let's assume that like, you know, even if we get more resources, it's not gonna be an extensive amount. It could be
Right.
a part-time clerk, it could be something, a sixth of a pad, it could be something. It's not, you know, I think it just needs to be more realistic, you know, based
Yeah.
on, I don't expect in there, you know, I would hope, I just don't think in the next 10 years, we're gonna, you know, it's not gonna become a
So are
official
you-
town
Would
department.
you say
and-
on, I guess, tentatively, would you be in favor of any of these? Or is it, do you still want to kind of go back?
I
to
mean,
review?
yes, you're asking me, like Chair of the
Well, no,
Historic
no,
Commission, if I'm in
well-
favor of these things, I would love it, but.
I like John's idea to send it
Yeah,
back
to Judy.
and then take a look at it again.
Yeah.
Yep.
Why don't we do that?
And like, bear in mind, like, I don't think we should really put in a lot of things that are like, encourage home, like, I think instead of encouraging homeowners, I think it has to be more along lines of like, increasing education, right? So we
Yeah.
can do things like, not just the schools, but maybe it's like, you know, and actually Betsy Dyer had a great suggestion where it was like, you know, we wanna say like, oh, encourage homeowners to have like preservation and easements, so like, what if you don't know what that is? Like, there's no easy way to find out. And like, maybe it's like, you know, we can update our website, but like, so people know why you would want to do these things. And that there's not just from like the goodness of your heart because you love old buildings, like there could be economic advantages for doing it. Like, so I think that's the type of thing we need to start first with is like a.
So we can send some notes back to
Yeah.
Judy, and she can, you know, we can, you know, she will maybe watch
Yeah,
this, you know, this part of the meeting, or the meeting.
Yeah, I mean,
That's, yeah, okay.
I mean,
I
so
think-
I think we can say to her like, you know, I think we'll all tentatively like, you know, if she wants to work on a section, but like it has to be a little bit more realistic. Ooh.
John, do you want to put yourself on mute? We have you on my phone, so they don't need to.
And he unmuted the Zoom session.
Oh, can you mute him as the host, maybe?
Yeah, you can mute them.
So I
think that's
so again, I'm not necessarily like, well, like, except for the things that are like, you know, encourage homeowners. I think that's just, you know,
Yeah.
that's a little too amorphous. But I'm okay with the
So,
things
like,
here. But I just am not
Review
sure.
the scenic bylaws.
Yeah,
Road
like-
bylaws, is that valid?
I mean,
I mean, I don't.
I think that's based on like the state. I don't know that, and we haven't done like we don't do the scenic road
Right,
like
right,
bylaw.
right. That's really
more
the
like
planning board.
planning
Just
board.
muted himself.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Okay.
figured that would do.
Okay, so.
So it's
so
not
we're-
that I'm against any of these things. I guess maybe I might be jumping the gun by saying the implementation of these things.
So we just want to make it a little more realistic.
Yeah.
And have
Pare it
show
back a little bit.
how some of this can be done, and maybe show a little more of the benefit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was what you had asked for at the last meeting, too.
Yeah.
Okay, so why don't we give that feedback back to Judy, okay? And that brings us to number 10. And, yeah, so these we never discussed. So it's community health. So should I read them out? And we're just, 10A, design Walpole as a healthy community. I wasn't sure what that meant, design. Designate, I think, maybe, I don't know.
Oh, sorry.
But that didn't seem quite
To me,
right.
it meant,
Like
you know,
thoughtful planning.
use the lens of
Yeah.
community health when you're looking at zoning and new projects and things, right? Like,
Ah,
you're intentionally designing to promote health.
right,
Was
right,
how I
right.
interpreted
right,
it. It is,
right.
it's fuzzy.
So maybe she
it's
could word it
definitely
just
fuzzy,
a
but-
little
Let's
better,
just say
maybe, because
plan.
that meaning makes sense to me.
Right?
Yeah.
If we're going back to zoning or
Yeah.
land use.
That does make sense to me, though, what you just said. So through zoning, infrastructure policies and investments and public realm enhancements support downtown as a compact commercial center and a complete walkable urban neighborhood. So that's a zoning thing, and partly, I mean, there's other things as well,
And
but.
is, like, maybe there's more behind it, but to me, is that just a really long-winded way of saying have a grocery store downtown? Right?
Right,
Like,
right,
yeah.
yeah.
What else?
Yeah, because that's what we're missing, is
Right, what
downtown.
makes it
Yeah.
a complete neighborhood or a compact
Yeah,
commercial
yeah,
center?
Yeah,
Well, some of that kind of goes back to even, Donnell's point about the action plan from 2015 about updating that. That included items that were really about trying to
What the
look
town's
at what's
missing.
missing. Yeah.
Yeah,
so that plan's there.
so do we need to tie this to that? Should we tie this to that plan? Reference it?
So do we want to, I'll go through reading them, but we should see whether we want to change things or add what you just said, the action plan to this.
I think that makes sense.
Makes
because
sense.
already,
It's already there.
Yeah, through
Something.
zoning,
Yeah.
infrastructure policy, investments.
And what was that? That's the,
the first one.
yeah.
I don't know, I mean, so this, I guess the elements, you can tie this to economic development, housing, walkability, you can also tie that to transportation.
And we already have some of that.
Yeah, I mean, I would expand on the elements by including, I think, was that section 7, transportation,
Mhm.
circulation, so I would have that under elements.
Yeah, so it's kind of in a way, it's kind of a soft thing because you can, like the second one, enhance existing and develop new trail systems and other publicly accessible community amenities in downtown, suburban, and rural areas that enable residents to participate in healthy exercise. But we're already doing some of those in other parts, which they would benefit from getting healthy exercise. But it's a good thing to do.
Yeah, and
Just-
I think
just-
she mentioned too, some comments, she repeats for the emphasis of repeating it, like it's done intentionally to basically
Right.
highlight that it's both
Oh,
in
that-
that section, but it's expanded upon in this.
And that's fair, so people can
Yeah.
see the linkage of.
Yep.
Ensure that complete streets and other transportation improvements are designed to accommodate universal access, including wheelchairs and adaptive bicycles. And that's actually a big one, I think. I have a brother-in-law who's handicapped, and just being with him sometimes, it's been a surprising how unfriendly even places where you think are handicapped accessible are not.
Yeah.
Support, this is 10B, support policies, programs, and initiatives that make Walpole an inclusive community for our residents. Work with regional health organizations to assess social determinants of health and community inclusion in Walpole, focusing on vulnerable populations, e.g. aging, limited English proficiency, disability, racial and ethnic minorities, and low-income households. Strengthen public education and public awareness of
skipped
Well-
one.
You skipped one.
Oh, I'm sorry, yep. Adopt community-led racial equity trainings for all staff, boards, and commissions. Strengthen education, public education and public awareness of Walpole's increasing population diversity and promote cultural competence.
I have a question on that one.
Yeah.
I really like it in theory, but I think maybe it's too broad. Like, are we saying that it's the goal is to strengthen public awareness for all residents and promote cultural competence among all residents, or is this more for staff, like town staff who are interacting with the increasingly diverse populations?
That's a good question.
I would indicate, I guess you would want to have it for both, but it isn't specific, so that's kind of.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
to me, if we're talking about the master plan, the staff part is much more immediate, I think,
Yeah.
and appropriate.
So we could say for staff.
Well, I
or-
would,
And for community.
I'd be curious to hear how they were thinking about
Okay,
it.
yeah.
But that's,
So that would be a Judy question.
yeah, but I think initially,
Yeah.
staff would be the most.
And we are looking to have her at the next meeting,
Yeah.
by the way.
Yes.
That's a. Evaluate the feasibility of establishing a community health outreach system to increase knowledge of and access of health services for vulnerable residents in Walpole and nearby communities. That's a good one.
My only comment was like, it says partnerships with local clergy, but I think we can like expand upon that, right? Cause like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
you know, I know there's like, let's say apartment complexes where there's a lot of people who, you know, are new to Walpole, who might be, or there could be cultural centers in the area. I just don't necessarily love tying everything to people who go to church.
And there are other organizations in town that are working
Yeah.
on some of these things that could be brought in to.
I think maybe it was
So-
part of the long list because there's a comment, but I just wanted to make sure we just don't stop
Yeah,
it.
it almost
Don't
looks
stop
like
at
it's
clergy.
missing something,
Yeah.
so do we wanna add a few stuff, or do we wanna,
Cultural centers, you said?
cultural centers?
Yeah, I was just thinking like there might be, you know,
Civic groups or
yeah,
maybe.
civic groups, like,
Alright,
I mean, I could even imagine there's like some way that we could do like, yeah, like somehow using like the parent groups in the schools to relay the information, things like that, you know. Just trying to think like how you touch all these different corners.
Right. I know just having a directory of services is a big help for people, you know, that I know one organization I was in did that once.
Yeah.
You know, so if you needed, you know, mental health or social services or, you know, housing or, you know, there was a telephone number, an organization you could call, or somebody could call, you know.
Right.
So that's the last one. Do we wanna pretty well go with the ones that are here? We pretty well good with that? Just maybe some of these minor changes?
follow up on the strength in public education,
Education.
public awareness, determine who's that for,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and again, transportation circulation as an element for the first one, under 10A.
I don't know if it needs a separate action item. I just keep coming back to the idea of translation services. I think they're sorely needed,
That's
you
yeah.
know, in
I think that's
town services.
I think that's worthy of adding, actually.
Yeah.
Because I would imagine the police or fire may run into those things. You know, certainly the school system
Yeah.
has to
Right.
handle.
Yeah.
As we become more diverse, that may become more of a
I'd actually be really curious to know how public safety
handles
handles
yeah,
that. I
yeah.
know the schools, you know, it's not the same, it's not often in a crisis situation, and they have like, you know, a language line they can utilize in different
Yeah.
services, but
That's
you're
right.
right, I never
But
thought
if you have
about.
somebody going to emergency call.
Right, and nobody
and-
there,
and-
yeah.
Yeah, speaks English, yeah. So why don't we add that one? And how did you word that?
I didn't really.
Okay.
So,
Play the tape.
Explore.
if we do add it, oh, yes?
People aren't gonna like that urban neighborhood, phrase in there. I don't think, most of the people that I've talked to at the high school and at our programs are,
Oh, for number one?
they don't want downtown Walpole being an urban center.
Yeah, I
They
understand
don't
that,
want
John.
the Gilmore building built either, you know, they don't want any more high rises.
You can remove the word urban, just have walkable neighborhood,
You could,
Yeah.
yeah.
makes sense.
But of course, people can do downtown whatever zoning allows them to do, John, so whether people like it or not, I mean, it's, the reason for zoning, though, is to direct development where it belongs. That's really what you want to do,
Well, they like it or not, I don't know.
yeah. So, but taking out urban, that's fine.
Government.
We can take that out, and then to
Yeah.
kind of Kara's point, though, about, so was it English language services?
It's,
So-
it's,
Yeah, I don't know.
Translate.
I don't know if it's translation, like, I don't know if we wanna zoom in on translation or something about linguistic
Yeah, it's-
diversity or,
And like when we went back to our, I'm looking at the initial draft recommendations, like that this whole thing about like a noteworthy challenge in Walpole is the absence of a local newspaper. So general public communication is difficult, especially for people with limited technology at home. It's even more difficult for renters, people with low income, like, but that's also like goes into that as well, right? Like your translation services, is like we need, I think we need something about the dissemination of information. I don't know. That sort of feeds off of what you're talking about.
Yeah. Well,
Well, they got a big new library downtown,
yeah.
full of newspapers, there's 2 big reading rooms and nobody ever in them.
Right, but John, if you have to work multiple jobs and the library is open from, you may not be able to make it during the hours when the library is open.
Well, the library has to change their hours then.
Thank you for volunteering to staff it from midnight to 3 a.m. Put that in the minutes.
We pay enough taxes, $120 million a year, they can keep the library open, where people can use it. It's
Well-
just common sense.
I don't think it's up to us to solve that problem here.
I think I guess to the bigger point is, a lot of, and this goes back to, I'm not to go on a whole tangent, but like zoning related items, we have to notify through a method that's prescribed by Mass General Law, which hasn't been updated since the 1960s. So I still have to run something in the paper,
Yeah.
and the paper is a free paper that no one looks at.
Yeah.
And the whole
That's right.
process
The whole
is
world's
held up on that.
changed.
So I mean, I think communication in general, I mean, it seems pretty obvious in 2022, you have social media as an option, but you're still not reaching everybody. And I think how better can you communicate with older residents as well as residents that may not speak English as a first language. So I think it's a wide array of just disseminating information and communication.
so
in a
maybe it's
better
something
method.
about inclusive communication policies or practices or systems, right?
Yeah.
That takes into account varying levels of access to
Access to
social
information,
media,
and that
right,
could be,
and language barriers and whatever it is.
If we're looking for translation services, why don't we just say,
Yeah, I didn't know if that was too narrow. I mean, I think that's
but that could go into
Any
all
different
the other
cultures.
areas that
Right,
we've
but once it's
talked
translated, how do you get it out into the?
Yeah, well,
It's like
I don't
not
think
just-
you're gonna get translations out, but.
well, it's two different things. Like it's somebody who maybe comes to the town clerk's office who needs
Translated.
something and needs a way to communicate. It's
Right.
also proactively having information
Resources,
available
yeah.
in multiple languages for people who need it. But
I wonder if the city have some kind of a phrase that they use for the person that they would call upon, because certainly they're more familiar with.
Larger communities have better resources. I mean, I've seen towns that have their website even just has like a translation service. Like City of Worcester has that option. You can translate it. to,
Newton
like,
has it.
Yeah.
language and communications access is what Boston calls it.
Yeah.
That might be good. That's a double.
Language and communications access.
Language and communication.
What would that go into the last one?
Maybe it's a separate item.
At a C,
It could be a
under
separate-
C?
Under C.
Language and communication access.
And it could mention translation, like translation services or something, so it gives a concrete example maybe,
Such as.
such as.
Well,
Language and
I just
communication.
learned that one of the top 5 languages spoken in the public schools for the students who are learning English is Nepali.
Oh,
And I would
Wow.
never have
yeah, yeah.
ever
Yeah.
realize that was
Yeah.
so
Even,
prevalent, and
Yeah,
it
yeah.
just makes you think how much like you think you understand who's in the community, and it's changing so rapidly.
Yeah.
It's hard to.
So, I guess if this would be added as a recommendation, one of the things that, talking to Judy about this, if we do have new items, we kind of want to make sure they're fleshed out in terms of responsibility, all the
Right,
different
right.
criteria there. So they have language and communication access, such as
Translation services.
translation services.
Well, the other thing, we hired a secretary recently, and I noticed that on most of the resumes, the candidates, the men and the women,
Yeah.
were bilingual. They had one or two other languages.
Mm-hmm.
So, on contact positions, you hired someone who's bilingual or who speaks a couple of languages.
Then they
And
could
the,
become
and
a
the other thing
resource.
is, from the old days, everybody who parents or grandparents were migrants. It's called personal responsibility. Learn English.
Wow.
That's a good solution too. And they do have telephones now that anybody can have a telephone that translates anything.
Yeah.
So that if people want to learn English and be here, the town doesn't have to hire a cadre of translators to.
Not everyone has access to smartphone technology, John, so it seems great, but it's still not, it's also, that's a limitation on disseminating that information.
But to your first point, John, about
Economics, I'd rather give the money to the cultural resources or the historical resources and not have people learn English.
I guess to your first point, John, though, you mentioned staff, about looking for staff that are bilingual. That could be a resource needed,
Yeah.
staff capacity or staff.
So just having a list in the town
The
of people who
contact
speak.
point, like town
Yeah.
clerk's office,
Languages,
they have somebody
so-
bilingual.
Yep. All right, so I can flush that out.
Okay, so we'll do that. So with the changes we mentioned, are we good on those changes? That- So any other discussion or comments? So entertain a motion to accept the recommendations for Go 10, including the ones that we just added or the changes we just made.
so moved.
Moved by Janet. Any other discussion?
We're gonna suggest to Judy to
To
do the
do
changes.
yeah, and we're gonna give her some other wording, and then she's gonna go back and take a look at that. So, Dean?
Is that a yes?
Yeah.
Thank you. John? John?
Can you just give a thumbs up or a thumbs down, John?
Yeah, just a thumbs up or thumbs down, John?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, my vote's no. I think that this is too much of a hodgepodge of the different things. They've got trails in here, which doesn't belong here, bicycles. This is like, I don't know what this is. It isn't the traditional Department of Public Health type of thing.
Okay.
Okay, so no, John is no.
So I'm gonna vote no.
Okay. And Carrie?
Yes.
Yes. And Janet?
Yes.
Yes. And Jen?
Yes.
Danelle?
Yes.
Yes, and myself is yes. So the vote is 6-1-0. And again, we're send this back to Judy as well. and-
Yep.
But we're
We
letting
have
know.
comments, we have to
Yeah.
vote on that. I know we have to seriously look at the historic preservation items, but, yeah. I think that's a vote for everything, really. So I know you had asked some questions of Judy,
Yes.
regarding kind of next phase and next step. I don't know if you want to touch on that before we wrap up.
Yeah, so I'll go over this very quickly. So the next step is for our committee to vote on the entire report, or draft on the entire report. And we'll see how we need to do that now that we see how significant the changes are. We want to make sure people do get a chance to weigh in and vote on individual things. So I think what we want to ask Judy to do is to do the red line copy, so people can clearly see what did change and what we just voted on. So the next step, though, would be to get the complete draft of the report, and that would include everything. It would include, remember, we gave comments back on the findings on the current state. So they have gone and made all those changes, and that will be included in that draft. So it will be the whole report. So we would get the report, and then we would be voting on it. And that would probably happen in about a month or so. I think that's what we're looking at. So it might be a meeting in early December.
Yeah.
It probably would
And
be.
we had talked about this too. November's going to be kind of a mess once
Yeah.
we get later in the month with the holidays. So
But I think we want to work with her just to see, I do want to make sure that everyone gets a chance to consider, all of the recommendations, and if there are significant questions or concerns people have, or we would need to do, obviously there's some sections we need to vote on, that we give that enough time. And we might be able to do that when we get the whole report, because most of this I think we're pretty well in agreement with. We did also want to do a public forum, and the public forum would be more like a presentation, and Patrick and I were talking about that today. It could be at the library, but it would be us presenting the report, not for input, but just to let the public know, what we have done, and certainly people may have some opinions, and we're always willing to hear those. And then the only board that needs to vote on this is the planning board. So I think at this point, we're not looking to do that until after the first of the year, so it'll probably be January. Originally, I had told the planning board it might be in December. But we also talked about going to the select board just to present it to them. They don't need to approve it, but it would be nice if we present to them first before we go to the planning board, and ask for their endorsement, and hopefully they can give that. And that would be that would be good to have before we go to the planning board. And then we'd go to the planning board for the final vote, and that's the only board that needs to vote on this is the planning board. And we're looking for an up or down vote. It's typically the planning board doesn't go and tear it apart and selectively vote on things. It's usually the whole report as a single entity. So that would be that we would then meet at least one more time to go through the final draft. And if needed, we would do a second meeting, but we'll see if we need that or not. So we're looking to go to the select board and the planning board in the January, maybe a little beyond that time frame, depending upon scheduling.
Do you know when we're going to expect the draft?
So I think she said it would take a month.
yeah, so pending on the vote.
And do you know how long after we have possession of that draft you're going to have that meeting?
We want to give enough time for people to read it, and it's going to be it's a large report. Yeah, no.
And
So
obviously after this, we do need to kind of review obviously what was redlined.
Yeah.
As part of that follow-up meeting. Considering, the recommendations are a major chunk. There's a lot of that background information that everyone worked on, and there's subcommittee groups that I think we would love to make sure.
we
that's
just want to
addressed.
verify, but
At least have Judy explain what she did
Yeah.
with those comments and where they are, but then we need to also look at the historic preservation goals again, just because we haven't come to a conclusion on that. So, yeah, I think after we've reviewed it for a month, I think she said it could be a little bit less than a month, so theoretically, if they get something by late November, early December, maybe try to schedule a meeting for 2 weeks after that.
But you're right. We want to make sure our committee has
Yeah,
enough
I
time to
wanna-
look at it, because we've been often rushed.
I wouldn't think we should be able to look at it and have enough time to have another meeting, afterwards or whatever. Because I'm sure once we see that rough draft, we're going to all have comments and sit down and talk about it some more.
So you're thinking we should have a meeting just to discuss it before we look to do a vote?
I don't know. I think the
Or
vote
I
can
think he's
take
saying a
place at
follow-up.
that
Yeah, I
meeting,
think he's
but
saying we might need a follow-up after that.
After that,
if
yeah,
there's
and
significant
we might,
changes.
because we do have a lot of open issues, so that's very possible.
And I think it would be good if we could do a doodle poll for that to try to get as many people as possible.
Yeah.
I would hate for the final vote to be 7 people.
Yeah.
Yes, no, and she will be at that final vote. Judy did commit to being at our meeting. So that's really where the complexity of scheduling the meeting is that her schedule is very busy.
Yeah.
So we first have to get her lined up, and then we,
And some of this
Yeah.
also comes down to, the contract with hers was in her group was for a year, but a lot of that is also dependent on getting the project done. She's not going to leave us high and dry.
yeah.
So her scheduling becomes problematic because when we first met in October, He's scheduled for a year. She has to block off time. Whenever I talk to Judy, she literally is meeting with like 3 towns every day. Like
Yeah.
her and her team are all over the place. So,
But let's see what we can do, because we do want to get everybody here if we can.
Oh,
So
absolutely.
we need to work around with her and see if we can do that. Yeah.
I think that meeting should be scheduled as far out in advance so people can make plans.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's gonna be an
Yeah.
important one to be,
Yeah. So
We
we
can
can
maybe-
work on that right away.
yeah, I think once I
So, but it's also predicated on making sure we get the draft early enough that we do have enough time to.
but it's gonna be around the holidays. It's gonna be the problem.
And it maybe we need to wait till January. You know, that, it may, I mean, if we get the report at the end of November, it may require us sitting on it a month and waiting till January before we can meet and approve it, because it will be a lengthy report, and we do have a lot of other open issues, you know, things that we need to go back and look at, and.
So do you think that maybe we should have just one of the team meeting before we even have Judy in?
We
I
could
think
do
that
that.
might be actually
Yeah.
probably be a better.
Yeah.
Just knowing
Yeah.
her availability, I know
think we
she could be
should.
there for the
Yeah.
presentation of the
deadline.
planning board, presentation for the final vote, but then it becomes a matter of, to be perfectly honest, we have a budget assigned with the two, so if we can
Yeah.
maybe have an internal meeting.
And it's easier to get all of us, that's where the
Yeah.
doodle poll comes in.
Yeah.
That's easier for us to find a day than
Right.
to also have to have her included in that. So why don't we plan on that then? But I think we need to settle with her when we're gonna get the report. Because I think if we get it at the end of November, then we may not be able to really meet till January to have our own meeting. Because I think, you know, everybody's gonna be busy with the holiday,
Yeah.
so. And it will be a lengthy report. So maybe
You
that's.
keep saying lengthy report. How many pages are you expecting?
Well,
I'm expecting over 100.
Yeah.
100.
probably over 100.
Yeah.
Talking to Judy, I mean, I think she really wants it to be an efficient document. And this is just our general conversation.
So maybe it's less.
Some towns will throw everything into it, and it's like, great, I'm not going to look at a 400-page
Right.
report with a lot of background data. That doesn't really help me out.
Get
so I
lost
think-
in it.
Yeah, I
But
think
but I looked at the one, like the one from 2004, you know, it's over 100
Was it?
pages.
And maybe we can task our former subgroups to be the ones that really look at that pref, to
Well,
make sure
that's-
all the changes,
That's also a
right?
good suggestion,
Like,
to make
so
sure
we can
that,
rely on, okay, I've looked
Yeah,
at, you know,
right.
this, you've looked at that, like.
I think that is a very good suggestion, Jen, to do that, yeah. And that also has a continuity, that those are the people who already had spent a fair amount of time looking at it, and they are representing the committees or the area of interest that, you know, that pertains to their expertise or to their, you know, representation, so. So why don't we plan on
wouldn't
that?
be meeting in subcommittees again, we would just be committing to be the people
Um,
that sort of,
We could do it that way without meeting, because there's no reason to have to consolidate all the input.
I don't think so.
Yeah, but I think that would be more practical.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. That was a lot of work, and again, I want to thank Patrick for facilitating that. Yeah, yeah. No, I think that's a good plan. So, so we will reach out to Judy. We'll see what she comes back with. We're schedule a meeting just of our committee.
I think,
And then,
yeah.
and then we'll make sure we leave enough time also for us to get the report, and also to assign people to, you know, as we just discussed, the people.
And I can take this feedback to Judy too. So I mean, I guess I would anticipate from today's date, estimate about a month before a plan is provided. And if the board feels that meeting ourselves first before having her come in for a final vote, we can handle that as a doodle poll. We can
Yeah.
have some dates available,
Yeah.
maybe in December or January.
So-
That's probably the better.
So it might be January, I'm
Yeah,
thinking,
that's
after
fine.
this point, just to give everybody enough time. I think people have felt a little bit that we haven't had enough time often to read, you know, read the material, so,
Sounds good.
yeah. So we have, anybody else have any other questions about the schedule plan? No, we just have we have one other very important item, and that is that we need to vote on the minutes. And I want to thank Patrick for,
We didn't vote on the minutes last time either. So
Right.
I remember you brought that.
yeah.
So we didn't vote on the minutes from
From
July or August.
August.
And so I don't know if
Has everyone,
everyone's prepared, it's fine.
everyone, yeah, do people want to look them over before we do that vote? Or,
I think so.
yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
I did look them over for the last meeting, and I don't recall.
Yeah. So why don't we do that? It's you know, it's what we should do, is everybody should have a chance to look over everything. So we're talking about July, August.
July, August,
September,
and 2 September meetings.
And now
So-
October.
Yeah.
Yeah. So a motion to adjourn? Second. And Dean?
Yeah, yes, motion to adjourn.
Yeah, John?
Yes.
Carrie? Janet?
Yes.
Jen?
Yes.
Danelle?
Yes.
And myself? And so it's 7-0-0.